Okay, I'd like to call this meeting to order. Today is Monday, September 15th, 2014. We're here for the purposes of meeting for the regular meeting of the Elmhurst City Council. It is 7:30. I would ask that you all rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you call the roll to establish a quorum.
Gutenkopf. Here. Deuter.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Leader.
Here.
Polumsky.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Hipskin.
Here.
York.
Here.
Levin.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
Conquist.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Mulliner.
Here.
Wagner.
Here.
14 present, 0 absent.
14 present, 0 absent. We have a quorum. We are officially in meeting. Agenda item number 3, receipt of written communications from the public. At this time, is there anybody in the audience? If so, please raise your hand. Is there anybody in the audience who has any written communication that they would like to submit for the official record? I see one. Ms. Sullivan, yes? Did you raise your hand? Please provide whatever it is you want to provide to Clerk Spencer. Anyone else at this time who wishes to provide any written communication? If so, I'd ask you to raise your hand.
You want me to call you?
Okay. That concludes our written communications portion of the meeting from the public. On to agenda item number 4, public forum. This is the opportunity for anybody in the audience to address the City Council on any item they so wish. We ask out of respect for the other people that want to speak and also the meeting that we're having here tonight to get our business done, that you keep your comments to 3 minutes. If you go over 3 minutes, I will give you a gentle reminder and ask you to wrap it up. In addition, a little bit of an announcement as it relates to public forum. Recently, there was an opinion issued by the Public Access Counselor and the Attorney General's office as it relates to open meetings, and this was out of the city of Lamont. There was a case there where there was an issue between elected officials and someone who wanted to speak about whether or not they should state their address. And the Public Access Counselor issued an opinion that said that anybody who speaks at public forum does not have to give their address. So we are going to be adopting that immediately. There's a whole big issue. Certainly you can read the opinion. I guess what I'm trying to say is, as it relates to providing your address, I would consider it optional when you speak at public forum. I can tell you from personal experience, if somebody tells me that there's a tree that needs attention at their house, I think it's good that we know the address. So I would say this, we're going to keep it as, in fact, on the sign-up sheet tonight, we actually remove reference to address. So it's up to you. If you want to state your address, I know that I have, and I know specifically other elected officials, if a problem is brought up during public forum, sometimes that night, or certainly the next day, many public officials will actually drive that area of town to take a look at the problem. But that having been said, statement of your address is not required. Purely optional. Clerk Spencer, do we have anybody signed up for written public forum this evening?
Yes, we do. We'll start with Ron Bottens.
I guess we're here to talk about repaving North Elmhurst streets. We not only have to repave them, we have to seal the cracks in the new resurfacing because water and salt will get underneath and they don't last very long. I use I-55 weekly, and where they sealed the 2 lanes with a hot tarp, they're in good shape. Where the contractor didn't seal those cracks, there's holes in the middle between the lanes that 5, 6 inches deep. So we need to address some of these cracks in the new paving rather than just let it fall apart in a period of a few years instead of several years. Thank you.
Thank you. Clerk Spencer.
Joe Reina. R-E-I-N-A, Joe. Okay.
Oh, you don't have to sign in to be here, but would you like to speak? All right.
Okay. Ron Abata. Oh. I just signed the sheet and oh, okay. Okay. I did what everybody else did. Okay. How about Kathy? Did she do the same thing? Okay. All
Just
right.
announce the name. I don't want to miss anybody.
Okay, Kathy Abata.
Just happy to be here.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Ed Godfrey.
Same, happy to be here.
Okay. Diane. Ferry.
Okay.
Diane Benning.
You'd like to speak? All right. Please approach the microphone. I would ask that you state your name for the record, and look forward to hearing from you.
My name is Diane Benning. I live in the 7th Ward. I understand our streets have not been paved, majority of, in 45 to 50 years ago. I think it's about time. I know every year they're in there sealing the cracks and taking care of them. My husband says they're doing a great job at taking care of them. I think they wouldn't have to be doing that great job if they were fixed properly at this time in need. At the end.
Next, Ellen Benning. Okay, thank you. Claude Pagash.
Claude Pagach, 566 West Gladys. I got the Elmhurst newsletter. New single-family home stormwater management policy. This council, in this year, has probably passed more ordinances in regards to what a homeowner has to do, and it has done its best to avoid any responsibility on the acres of parking lots that are asphalted in this town. Maybe the homeowners have the majority of property in this town. Maybe they do. But all we get out of this council is endless ordinance. The homeowner will do this, the homeowner will do this, the homeowner will do that. I'm just a little curious why this council stays away from acres of asphalt-covered lots. Is it so easy to tell a homeowner that he's going to have to buy a home and going to have to dump in another $10,000 or $15,000? Is that it? Is the homeowners can't come after this council with bodies of lawyers and tell you to all go take a jump in a creek? You keep on adding to the homeowner's tax bill. Not only do you have them try to fight off stormwater problems, you want them to build your garages. And this business community is going to benefit from the fact if any of this ever comes to pass. But you got to start laying off the resident. I've said this before and I'll say it again, the business community hasn't stepped into this room one time that they haven't asked for something. You gave them the ordinance so you could split TIF taxes. You don't create TIF for residential areas, and you're going to come and tell me the law says you can't do it. But you create them for everybody that wants a business and where it's located. You give them the TIF. You gave $22,000 away because some guy ran around to get a chicken joint in. Well, when it comes to this homeowner, the best you can do is increase his property taxes, increase the sale taxes, and raise the prices on anything he uses. Now, somewhere along the line, you're going to break him. He's got to feed his family, and he's got to keep a roof over his head.
Mr. Pragash, I'd ask you to wrap up. You're at your 3 minutes.
I've come to the conclusion that this town can live with the residents, but it sure can't live with the business community.
Maria Kreshnicka.
Hi, I'm Maria Kresnicka. Don't worry about it, it's taken me a long time to pronounce it too. And I live at 239 Elm. I'll tell you where I live because I'm talking to you about flooding issues and you need to know where I live so you know about my flooding issues. My neighborhood has been experiencing flooding problems for the last several years. I want to thank our First Ward Alderman Diane Gutenkopf and Marty Deuter for including our ward in the study that's on the agenda this evening. Thank you very much. Two things I want to address. First is a point I made at the last Public Works meeting. In the last issue of the city newsletter, the article on the front page went into quite a lot of detail about the results of the biannual residence survey. Lots and lots of stats on how residents think it's a wonderful place to live. We do much of our shopping here. We give high marks to city services, and that's wonderful and that's true. But not until almost the end of the story, on page 2, is there even a mention of the flooding problem. When you look up the complete survey report, flooding is front and center, with the report indicating that there was, quote, a particularly large increase in this category. I understand that this is a newsletter and should focus on the positive, but you really lose credibility with citizens when you say that solving flooding issues is a top priority, and then you bury it in a major communication that goes out from the city to all of its residents. And speaking of solving flooding issues, I also want to address comments made by Alderman Healy at the last Public Works meeting. According to you, sir, you said that we're not going to solve or fix flooding problems, there's no guarantee, and all we can do is mitigate. So with all due respect, I can only assume that your campaign slogan was the opposite of President Obama's. Was it, no, we can't? We are not naive enough to believe that there's a 100% guaranteed fix, and that's not what we're asking for. Just as I'm sure that you're not naive enough to think that a $3 million underpass in York and Prairie Path will mean that there will never be another accident. The guarantee we're asking for is that you, our elected officials, take action to help us. We need help. Maybe it's a matter of semantics, but solving and fixing our problems is part of what you're here for. So please take a look at the city's mission statement. It's on the website. It says the city of Elmhurst is committed to provide responsive and superior government services in an environment of respect in order to protect and enhance the quality of life of those who live, work, visit, and conduct business in this community. So I would imagine that flooding and our issues fit into that statement. Thank you.
Kevin Graff.
Kevin Graff, 233 Cayuga. I would like to thank Alderman Brand for correcting me at the last city council meeting that the city did not purchase the Berto property, but rather had the opportunity to purchase that property and didn't. This property could have been part of a grander solution, but that opportunity is long gone now since Nitty Development is building 56 homes on that site. Better hope and pray, Avon on Pine, that the new stormwater policies work, especially since they are higher in elevation than you. I am disappointed that the city did not purchase that property, but I am very disappointed about last Monday's meeting with the Cayuga residents. The city came unprepared and had not answered the 27 questions that were submitted over a week in advance, nor have they taken into consideration any of the Cayuga residents' concerns into the proposed plans for York Commons. The only thing that came out of the meeting was that the city is not willing to change their plans. The overspill is right next to the residents' homes, no shutoff mechanism, outlets still right near inlets and sloping to the narrowest part of York Commons, and no guarantee the basin will not overflow into the adjacent homes. York Commons detention basin has changed from 36 acre-feet to 23, but no mention of how the inflow is being reduced from all the areas. The comprehensive plans need to be updated and shared with all. The only thing that hasn't changed are the homes now flooding on Crescent. In this case, it would be good to be on Crescent, but not good for Cayuga, Washington, Euclid, Villette, Swain, Saylor, or Jackson that will still flood. Unless I've read something wrong, the current plan for 100-year protection still has flooding of 41 homes on Washington, 84 on Villette and Swain, yes, that's 84, 14 on Saylor and Jackson, 15 on Spring and Harrison. York Commons only helps those homes on Crescent and possibly Washington unless the basin overflows. If the city spends millions of dollars on this short-term Band-Aid solution, it leaves many homes with no help. Will their flooding issues ever be addressed unless their expensive alternatives number 3 and number 4 are done? What happens when we get to that over 100-year storm like we've had several in the past few years? York Commons will overflow, and all that extra water will go downstream and flood those same areas worse. There is no plan for the overflow except flooding them. All areas have 2 or 5 year flood protection except Crescent, which has 10. Why is our first concern helping those 38 homes on Crescent instead of the 94 that flood on Villette and Swain or the 104 on Saylor and Jackson? Well, it's easier to cheaper to dig a hole in York Commons than upgrading the antiquated infrastructure. The current plan for York Commons detention basin with no shutoff mechanism leaves many homes with no flooding relief, helps one primary area and potentially causing further flooding in other areas, and puts the Cayuga residents and all the downstream residents in harm's way. Thank you.
Tamara Brenner.
Tamara Brenner. I live at the same place I lived at last time I was here, which is in the 4th Ward, as a matter of fact. And there's going to be a vacancy in the 4th Ward after tonight. I put in my application today. Nobody can say that I'm not an optimist. So the other thing I want to mention tonight, after the meeting 2 weeks ago, I was informed that the chairman of the Economic Development Commission, now sitting on the Zoning and Planning Commission as a commissioner, only intended to stay on the Economic Development Commission for last month's meeting and this month's meeting, meaning there was an overlap of those 2 commissions of only 2 months. As far as I'm concerned, that is 2 months too many. It shouldn't be complicated to sit on only 1 commission at a time, especially when the matters of interest of the 2 commissions overlap. The Economic Development Commission submitted letters of endorsement which reported unanimous support of the Economic Development Commission regarding 2 very major projects, development projects, that are before the Zoning Commission right now. There is no indication in either of those 2 letters that it was anything other than unanimous. I believe that the commissioner on the Zoning Commission should recuse from those 2 votes that are coming up later this month, although the votes won't probably happen until October. The public hearings are happening this month. There should be no overlap in these 2 commissions. And thanks to Alderman Gutenkopf for putting in a referral to clarify the policy, which I guess we don't have a policy, about whether citizens should sit on multiple commissions. We've got lots of people in the city. There's plenty of people to go around. There should be 1 person, 1 job here for these commissions. Thank you.
Last, I have Kathleen Sullivan.
Kathleen Sullivan. First, I want to say I was party to the conversation last week with Alderman Bram and Mr. Graff, and he refused to confirm or deny whether the city had the opportunity to purchase the property at the hospital. So, just for the record. I'm here tonight to read the comments of Keely Mueller Weitzel from 277 Berkeley Avenue. City Council, as many of you know, the construction of the academic wing at York High School has significantly impacted our flooding issues, especially in recent years. In the last 20 years, we have made many improvements and spent many thousands of dollars to keep water out of our basement, sump pumps, interior drain tile, regrading the yard, etc. During the design phase of the academic wing, a water detention pond was proposed for the location just south of our property. This was not included in the next set of plans. It is my understanding that the city and school district came to a financial agreement and the school district never paid. Apparently, District 205 thought it would be cheaper for them to use the Witzel property for their water runoff. Over the last 2 decades, we have mowed the lawn, shoveled the snow, and used our money to plant bushes, etc., to beautify our school district property. Other promises made during the design construction phase were broken, one being the construction of a berm on the east side of our property, adjacent to the service drive of the high school. This would have eliminated our flooding issues. The service drive is above our property. In the April 2013 flood, the high school wood chips and mud were pushed through our garage and onto our driveway. Our backyard was underwater, and water seeped into the basement. Our neighbor to the south on Berkeley had water in their first floor and filled their basement. The house next door to them lost 2 cars, both flooded in their garage. A fire truck got stuck because the water was so deep, and 2 other cars were stranded in the deep water. The storm drain in the middle of the bus entrance on Berkeley Avenue is actually higher than the gutter at our driveway approach. The water pools and doesn't completely drain. The city re-poured this curb at the time in approximately 2000. However, it never solved the problem since the high school parking lots and drives are at a higher elevation to our property. During these heavy rains, the storm drains under the parking lot reach capacity, and the water comes up out of the storm drain next to our garage, again, causing too much water in our yard and our basement. Are the storm drains on the high school property functioning as designed? Are there cracks or breaks in some of these drains causing the neighbors to flood? I have met several times with Frank Shu, I don't know how to pronounce that, Director of Facilities for District 205, several times in recent years to discuss solutions for these flooding issues caused by the high school property. The most recent was in June 2014. I suggested construction of a low concrete wall located between the service drive and our fence, approximately 2 feet in height, to help divert rain runoff on the east side of our property toward the south. I left a message for Superintendent Pruneau, who never contacted me in return. In summary, I ask that before the City of Elmhurst agrees to a memorandum of understanding to use District 205 property for water retention, that you negotiate with the school district to be a good neighbor and resolve the flooding issues that they have caused. She lists her email in the printed copy that you will have available to you, City Council members, to answer any questions. Thank you for resolving this issue. Keely Mueller-Weitzel.
That's all who signed in, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, that's it for everyone who signed in. Is there anybody in the audience who wishes to address the council at this time that did not have an opportunity to sign in on our sign-in sheet? If so, please raise your hand. This gentleman here, anybody else? Okay, sir, I'd ask you to approach the microphone and please state your name for the record.
Yes, my name is Jim Tanzer. I live at 830 Adele, and I'm here. Alderman Bram sent out a notice today of this council meeting regarding the streets. This November will be 28 years since I moved into 830 Adele. When I moved in, the streets were concrete, not new, but since that time they've never been replaced. And that's really a testament to the fact that concrete is an excellent street product for us up here in the North Elmhurst side. I know that they're starting to redo some of the streets with asphalt. I would expect that they'll have to be replaced much sooner as the streets are being discussed to be replaced up in the North Elmhurst area. I suggest that we still consider replacing them with concrete. by far, it's a much superior street. And as I can attest, it's probably been at least 30 years, and the streets have never been changed. Crack sealed, yes, a little bit of asphalt, but no potholes, no problems. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? At this time, anyone else wish to address the council? Seeing none, we'll move on. That concludes our public forum portion of the meeting. Any announcements this evening from the dais?
I've got one.
Clerk Spencer.
Candidate information, April 7th, 2015 consolidated election. Those seeking to fill the 7 aldermanic seats that will be open, that's 1 per ward, may pick up candidate packets from the local election official at the administration office, the city clerk, on the second floor of City Hall on Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014. The first date to circulate petitions for candidacy is Tuesday, September 23rd, 2014. The filing period will be December 15 through 22, 2014, and more information on that later. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Alderman Palomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to invite teachers and educational professionals throughout Elmhurst to attend an event hosted by Spring Road Business Association. It's Teachers Night Out. Invited to bring your IDs. Thursday, September 25th for fun, discounts, and raffles, starting at 3:15 through the evening. Thank you.
Okay, any other announcements? Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This Thursday, the 18th, at 7 p.m., there'll be a meeting here at City Hall for First Ward residents who live north of the tracks, roughly the area between the Quarry and York Road, First Street and North Avenue, to go into further discussion of the new Burke report that will be presented to us later this evening. So this is for First Ward residents who live north of the tracks, between First and North, York and the Quarry.
Just point of clarification, certainly it affects residents in the First Ward, but anyone's welcome to attend if they're interested.
Of course, anyone's welcome to attend, but we're going to be focusing on flooding-related issues that happen in that area. It's the subject of the most recent update to the Burke report, and this will be an opportunity for residents to actually meet with representatives from Christopher Burke Engineering, your elected officials, and city staff to have your questions answered and to have discussions about this.
Okay, Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Elmhurst Fire Department would like to invite the residents to their annual open house. It's Sunday, October 5th, and it starts at noon and it goes till 4 p.m. Fire safety and education, fun activities, light refreshments. Activities include blood pressure screenings, canine comfort dogs, tour of the station, NICOR safety booth, live burn room, firefighter fashion show, that'll be good, ComEd safety booth, Elmhurst hospital booth, child passenger safety, just to name a few. So if you're available, October 5th, we'd love to see you.
Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Along the same lines as Alderman Gutenkopf announced for the First Ward stormwater issues meeting, I also want to announce for the Third Ward related to the Crestview Park area for stormwater issues. The Burke report's being updated for that as well. Unless City Manager Grabowski corrects me, I think we've solidified a date of this month, September 30th, here at City Hall at 7 o'clock.
Yes, that is correct, Alderman Bram. Any other announcements?
Mr. Mayor. Point of clarification, my last note, it's station number 2, which is the one on the south side.
Okay, that does it for announcements. On to the consent agenda. I don't know if we had a full moon last week or what, but we've got a lot of referrals on here. Agenda item number 6. At this time, is there anybody who wishes to have anything removed from the consent agenda for further comment or the opportunity to vote no at this time? Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with all items listed and none removed. Alderman Hipskin with a motion, Alderman Deuter with a second. Clerk Spencer.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, motion carries. Consent agenda is approved with all items as listed. On to agenda item number 7, committee reports. 7.1 is a majority report regarding concrete streets out of the Public Works Department. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask that you read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Public Works and Buildings Committee that the annual concrete resurfacing budget be increased from $300,000 to $450,000 to provide funding for the resurfacing of residential concrete streets as outlined above. Be approved. Signed by Jim Kennedy, Chairman, Chris Healy, Vice Chairman, Diane Gutenkopf, unsigned, Michael J. Bram.
Okay, before I turn it over to Alderman Kennedy, I'll remind the council that this is a report and recommendation that was, as allowed under our code, deferred for 2 weeks, but it's before us now. I need a motion, Alderman Kennedy, and a second, Alderman Healy. Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to defer at this time to Alderman Polumsky and Alderman Dunn, who were the original creators of this referral, to give their points.
Okay.
Thank you.
Alderman Polumsky, do you care to comment?
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. In the 3.5 years I've been alderman, I've heard about the condition of concrete streets on the north side and how there is a need for more attention as well as more allocated funding. And I agreed. And I'm proud to have worked with staff and on a referral with Alderman Dunn, contributing to this new concrete street resurfacing plan, which not only redirects resources to where they are most needed, but signifies a shift in philosophy. I would like to thank staff, especially Superintendent of Streets, Kim McGrew. After putting the old plan aside, staff reevaluated the street conditions and devised a new plan that reprioritizes the streets most in need of repair and allocates additional funding. This funding increase is not a mere materials cost increase, but the largest fund increase for concrete streets in over 17 years. Additionally, I'd like to point out that now, for streets scheduled near the end of the plan, instead of repairing with cold patch, there will be concrete block replacement, which has not been the practice up to this point. And the single most important point in considering this report and coming up with the funding increase and where to draw the line is that when I asked staff if this increase was adequate, I was told that if given access to unlimited funding, they would not recommend accelerating the plan further with the new plan, that this is designed to resurface the streets where they're needed and in a way that will allow for longevity. And resurfacing a street when it's not necessary is destroying a community asset and wasting what we could be doing with our tax dollars. And I would draw the parallel to if you are working on home repairs and you want to, you know you need to paint your hallway and your kitchen, and then you say, well, I still have some funds left. Maybe I'll do my family room. But you wouldn't do your family room if you didn't need to. Maybe you'd fix your leaky faucet that's flooding your floor instead. So I think that this number that staff came up with has good backing to it, and I want to thank them for all the work on this. Thank you.
Very good. Alderman Dunn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to follow up to Alderman Polumsky's comments, concrete streets are not the main surface in town, but they're a very important surface. I had the good fortune to attend a few block parties in the past few weeks, and quite a few of them had concrete streets. And the condition of those were not pristine. However, they were in decent and adequate condition. And I know there's some that are more in disrepair. And as Alderman Polumsky mentioned, our city staff researched this, put significant time into it, walked all the streets. And one of the questions in the referral that we made was, is this the best method to rehab our streets? And one of our
commenters in public comment kind of alluded to the same fact that should we stick with concrete streets? I know I feel that concrete streets are a very durable and long-lasting surface, and there has been a change in philosophy. The state-of-the-art approach now is to grind the streets and to fill the cracks, put a polymer down, and then do multiple lifts on the surface, and that gives you a much more long-lived asphalt surface, repair the curbs and the gutters. So I was pretty satisfied with the rigor of our city staff's approach, and that this seems to be the best approach going forward. I think that 12 years to revamp our concrete streets is a reasonable time window, and one that I would support. And I wouldn't want to accelerate this too much because, as Alderman Plumsky mentioned, some of the streets are still in good shape, and if we fix everything right now, then they might have a tendency to come up for renewal all at the same time in the future. So it's probably more prudent to spread those out into the time frame that city staff recommends. Thank you.
Okay. Alderman Kennedy?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to thank Alderman Plumsky and Alderman Dunn. They did a good job of giving the overview there. I won't repeat what they said, but certainly their referral came about after we had a harsh winter, and so city staff went back. They used their expertise. They drew on their experience and their knowledge of paving of streets and how they should be maintained. And again, they came back with a recommendation over 12 years that we would increase the funding for repavement of concrete streets by 50%, from $300,000 to $450,000. And so I wanted to thank city staff for all the work. I think it's spot on. We have a lot of priorities. They basically stated that to keep these assets in good order going forward as they are replaced, this was the suitable amount of money. And we have other things we have to prioritize, and we should use those monies on those priorities. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Alderman Bram?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would like to start off with thanking the residents of the Third Ward who came out tonight, some of which who spoke, some of which deferred not to speak. This evening, the approximately 20 people who came out in regards to wanting to hear and see the result of this discussion that impacts them greatly. History of this issue. Yes, Alderman Dunn and Plumsky, I thank you as well for doing a separate referral after the 2 referrals that I did previous to that. I think that with 3 out of the 14 individuals on the city council deeming that concrete street resurfacing is needed, it definitely sends a message on this should be a priority. In the past, I've provided many visual aids, and today I will only do 2. This is a visual aid of our budget from 2007 to 2008 to 2012 to 2013 fiscal years. Out of all of those years, $313,000 were spent on the concrete streets within the city of Elmhurst, compared to the approximately $1.4 million that was supposed to be spent on concrete resurfacing in the area. I deem that there is a need to accelerate this. I don't think, as some of my fellow aldermen have already stated this evening, that by accelerating it, it is repairing something before its time. I think just the opposite. On many of city council meetings on this discussion, during budget discussions, during committee discussions, and here on the dais, I've shown the same photo over and over again that hasn't been repaired in about my 10 years, other than cold patch. I'm not gonna bring that photo tonight, but I'm bringing a new photo. My size 11 foot fitting in a pothole just today that needs to be repaired. I remind everyone, no sidewalks in this area. I remind everyone that everybody's in the street. Are we waiting for a lawsuit for someone to trip, to break an ankle, to break a leg due to potholes like this that continue to receive cold patch and not to be repaired properly? I agree with Alderman Polomsky's comments tonight, but a difference in opinion, I guess. Concrete patching isn't anything new and there's no new philosophy on it. The city staff this budget cycle has decided, at least proposed, to add additional dollars. That might be a different philosophy on it. But other than that, we've repaired the concrete streets throughout the city of Elmhurst, not only the 3rd Ward, with concrete patches. But we've repaired most of the potholes with cold patch, which, as anyone who has any experience driving over a cold patch, especially in a concrete street, more comes in your car than stays in the street itself. I think that there's 4 points that I made, and I will reiterate them briefly. One of which I already touched on, $313,000 spent over the past 6 years, which was budgeted or not budgeted for $1.7 million. Does that necessitate an acceleration of a plan for repairing or resurfacing these concrete streets? I believe the past dictates the future. Those streets that should have been repaired or resurfaced over those 5-6 years were not, and therefore we need to accelerate it quicker. The second point, in regards to getting all concrete streets on the same surface being asphalt, it actually, and city staff has concurred with this assumption, and Alderman Gutenkopf to my left was the one who brought that up in committee discussion. It would save dollars. Now, we can argue and debate on how many dollars, but it will save dollars once all city streets are on asphalt. As one of my neighbors came tonight saying that concrete lasts longer, I agree wholeheartedly. There is no city proposal, though, to resurface, if you will, or reconstruct these streets with concrete. It's too expensive, too costly, it's not going to be done. The plan we're moving forward with is resurfacing all the concrete streets with asphalt, and we need to get there quicker compared to later. The city has recommended the longevity, and this is a discussion topic I've brought up many a times over the years, that concrete streets should last between 50 and 75 years. Right now, and I asked the city for specific data, and it was very hard to come up with, and they've given me educated guesses, if you would, of how old are all the concrete streets within the city of Elmhurst. They ranged anywhere from a guesstimation of 30 years on up to, I believe, 60 years. I don't have that email in front of me. But if we go to the 60-year mark, and we have a plan that we're stating that would be funded by $450,000 to be 12 years, essentially we're saying, you who live on streets that have concrete will see your street revitalized, resurfaced at the end of the longevity, according to the 50 to 75-year prediction of how long concrete streets should last. That's not a plan that I could stand by. I don't think, just by looking at our past history of not funding concrete street resurfacing over the last 5 out of the 6 years, that doubling the budget from $300,000 to $600,000 is out of line. Yes, an increase is an increase, and I'm happy to see that $450,000 compared to $300,000 is being put forth for us to discuss and vote on tonight. I believe, though, that $600,000 is the appropriate amount. I don't want to see concrete streets failing, many more streets with many more potholes that a size 11 shoe fits in with inches to spare by the time we get to resurfacing those streets. In regards to the increase itself, it has been mentioned many a times that the increase is 50% from $300,000 to $450,000. That's significant. And as I already said, I don't want to trivialize that number. But as you look at my report, my minority report, the data shows otherwise. The increase is actually $100,000 to $110,000 additional. And again, I'm not trivializing that number. But the other dollars are being spent after I've had many conversations with the city staff over this issue. The other dollars are being spent, the approximate $40,000 are being spent on inlet upgrades. The northeast area of town, where all the concrete streets are in the 3rd Ward, are the only area that has the whole subdivision of street surface inlets. Every other part of town has those curb box inlets. This was never added in the budget line item before. That's $15,000. That is something new. So when we're talking $150,000 additional are being added to concrete streets, that's not a true statement. It's not a true statement per city staff's information that was provided to us. They're changing the polymer because they decided that the polymer that was laid over the initial concrete streets, grind and pave, was not the right direction to go. As one of my neighbors came out and talked about the cracks that are surfacing in brand new 1-year-old, 2-year-old asphalt streets over concrete. They're proposing an additional few $1,000s for saw and seal these new joints. And those cracks, the reason why they're happening is the base underneath those asphalt streets, the old concrete streets, continues to shift. So I ask you, is this what we want to keep? Is this what we want to move forward with for the next 12 years? I propose a $600,000 versus a $300,000 increase. And at this time, I would like to make a motion to substitute the majority report with the minority report.
Already substituted.
Alderman Bram, you want to state that again? A motion to substitute the minority for the majority?
Yeah, I said it differently, but same difference.
Okay. We have a motion before us to substitute the minority report for the majority report. Do I have a second on this motion? Alderman Gutenkopf? We have a second. So the motion now before us is to substitute the minority report, which is item 7.2 in your packets or on the web, for the majority report. Continued discussion. Alderman Honquist.
Yeah, I'd like to make a few comments on concrete streets. For those of you that don't know, I've only been serving about 15 months, so I don't have 10 years of experience looking at or putting my foot into concrete streets, even though my street does have 2 sections that are concrete. What I've learned, though, over these past 15 months is that one of the primary things we do is to work with staff who are the experts, they're the engineers, and work with other colleagues, other aldermen, as Polumsky and Dunn did, on issues that are important to them. So in this particular case, we've had 3 different reviews of this. We've had city staff go through and review all these streets. We've had the aldermen engage with city staff to review this. And then finally, we had Public Works Committee review this, all of whom have agreed that this is the right plan and that the $450,000 is appropriate. So the 50% increase in the plan put together in the majority report, I think, is the report we should support. But if I didn't, and I felt like I needed additional funds, the primary thing I would do is work with some of my colleagues to gather momentum so that when this comes up, there's full support to get this passed. My guess is there's not going to be full support for this. Matter of fact, it'll be based on the recent vote, very weak support, and we'll go back to majority report. So I would like to just reiterate my support for the majority report, thank Alderman Polumsky and Dunn for working on this with city staff, and let everyone know that this is a good plan going forward. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I deem it necessary to address some inferences that have happened now twice on this dais this evening. I have not only worked personally with city staff out of the 14 years that I've been an alderman, 12 of which I brought up this concrete street issue, 6 of those very vocally. The 2 years that City Manager Grabowski has been serving as our city manager, when I met City Manager Grabowski, this was the main item I spoke to him in our introductory meeting. So I want to make sure the residents who are here tonight understand and know that there has been work for many years on this. It has been highlighted behind the scenes as well as in front of the public on many occasions. And I personally don't think it is safe, as I've been told by my colleagues, that this picture is safe for any neighborhood. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Levin.
I just want to see if I have a correct understanding. So we're increasing the budget, it's a matter of degree, and I hear a statement that staff has recommended a certain level of funding and has stated that even if we went with the increased level regarded in the minority report, that it would be money that they feel would not be well spent. And I do acknowledge that Alderman Bram has brought up concrete street repair in the past. In fact, I think I've seen that picture before, or one just like it. But I think that I want to not just, I don't think we can just pick numbers. I think they have to be based on something. I feel that if staff has looked at it and worked for these many months and come up with what seems to be a recommended amount based on what is needed. I appreciate the increased amount. The streets apparently call out for that increase, but I don't see a real basis to go to 600. Why not 500? Why not 750? We can always pick different numbers. Any alderman can propose an increase or a decrease. I'm going to support the number that staff has recommended and that the committee has evaluated and determined to be appropriate.
Okay, any other comments? Anyone who has not had an opportunity that wishes to opine? Alderman Bram.
Yeah, just to answer two of the questions that have just been asked. In regards to the number and why 600 versus 500 or any other number, and no, I'm not part of city staff, therefore no, I did not come up with that number out of the air, though. The number that I chose was 600,000 due to the 5 out of 6 years of lack of funding, zero funding, that I showed on the visual aid chart that I displayed moments ago. Therefore, I think it's time to make up those dollars going forward. As I said, the past predicts the future, and therefore that I think in the near term, doubling, i.e. utilizing the dollars that were supposed to be allocated years ago that weren't spent, moving forward, should happen today moving forward. And now I forgot the secondary point that Alderman Levin just made. But essentially that I do also agree that staff has made commentary in regards to this is the plan we feel comfortable with. That is true. I am not debating that fact. We did a study, which I left it at home because everybody's tired of seeing me wave it around, which is 3 inches thick, that did a sampling of these very streets, at least in the northeast section of town. Did core samplings on some of them. And we as a committee actually discussed it briefly. And some of those results stated that those streets, there's a grade level of 3 levels, poor, fair, and I think good. That I believe Alderman Gutenkopf asked the question, and staff concurred, that most of the concrete streets are in fair condition. Not good, but fair. Now, there wasn't any percentage put on that, but there was a significant number of streets in that book, that study was done 7-8 years ago, that were marked as fair at that time, 7-8 years ago. Now, 7-8 years ago. The ones that are marked as fair 7-8 years ago, I'm sure they're not getting any better over time. I'm sure they're heading towards the poor category. So this is the rationale behind why I believe $600,000 is the right amount. It's twofold. The study shows me so. Staff concurred that most of the streets, the concrete streets in the city of Elmhurst, are in fair condition. I think we try to achieve good when it comes to asphalt streets. And then lastly, I think it's about distribution of funds and what is right to maintain all areas of town on an equal level. And I think that, during our discussions in committee, it was mentioned by some of my fellow aldermen that some of the asphalt streets are in desperate need of repair. And my comment back, and I believe this wholeheartedly, is then let's ask for that increase for asphalt street funding if they are that bad. My non-scientific poll was that people who live on asphalt streets are really annoyed because their streets are cut up because of new home construction. And I'm not trivializing. I'm sure there's a lot of, or not a lot, I don't know that. There's asphalt streets that are in need of repair past the new home construction patches. But if that's the case, then we should increase that budget level too. Fair distribution of funds throughout all the city of Elmhurst streets is what's needed here. I don't see, and I haven't seen, and I've walked some asphalt streets in other parts of town, potholes like this. And that is my concern. And I think $600,000, due to the past lack of funding, is an appropriate amount.
Alderman Gutenkopf.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's also important to point out that the functional difference between 450,000 and 600,000 equates to resurfacing all the asphalt streets in 9 years instead of 12 years. And I think that's an important point for people to keep in mind.
Okay, any other comments? Seeing none, I will ask Clerk Spencer to call the roll on the motion to substitute the minority report for the majority report. Clerk Spencer.
Graham.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
No.
Dunn.
No.
Leader.
No.
Polumsky.
No.
Hipskin.
No.
York.
No.
Levin.
No.
Healy.
No.
Honquist.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
Nay.
That's 2 ayes and 12 nays.
2 ayes, 12 nays, motion fails. On to the original motion, which is approval of the majority report, item 7.1. Any other comments or questions as it relates to the majority report, 7.1? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Honquist.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays, motion passes. Majority report 7.1 has been approved. On to agenda item 7.3, another committee report. This is a report out of Finance. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to read the recommendation.
It is therefore the recommendation of the Finance, Council Affairs, and Administrative Services Committee that the City Council direct the City Attorney to prepare a tax increment financing incentive agreement between the City of Elmhurst and Paragon Elmhurst Center LLC as outlined in this report. Signed by Kevin L. York, Chairman, Bob Dunn, Vice Chairman, Stephen W. Hipskin, and unsigned by Marty Deuter.
Okay, to put this before the council, I'll ask for a motion to approve the report and recommendation as read. Motion by Alderman Hipskin, second by Alderman York. Alderman Hipskin, would you like to introduce this, or do you want to?
I'll turn it over to the chairman.
Alderman York, your report.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'd just like to provide a little history to frame the report. TIF4 was formed in 2012 to encourage redevelopment of an area in Elmhurst that hasn't changed substantially in 30 to 40 years. The Hahn Street properties south of North Avenue and points north were also moved from TIF1 to TIF4 in order for those projected increases in EAV to help the redevelopment of the entire TIF4 area. Shortly after TIF4 was created, Mariano's Fresh Market made an $18 million investment in Elmhurst with the help of a $1.5 million TIF incentive, which was paid upfront to Mariano's and will be repaid to the city with future property tax increment over the next 10 years or so. What we are contemplating tonight is a TIF incentive for more redevelopment right at the York Street 290 gateway, one that is very complementary to Mariano's, very inviting to further redevelopment ideas, and also right in line with the redevelopment plan that is currently being discussed and finalized by the North York Steering Committee and city consultants. This property is the first impression of Elmhurst that you get as you're coming off of 290 westbound to York Street, currently a vacant and very dilapidated abandoned hotel property. The developer initially came to city staff early this year asking for TIF incentives far in excess of what this particular property will generate over the lifetime of the entire TIF. City staff worked constructively with the developer to arrive at the request we have before us tonight. The request has been enhanced, thanks in part to Alderman Healy, to include some best management practices as they relate to stormwater management, and is also enhanced to include, thanks to Alderman Deuter, some improvements for the pedestrian navigation to York Street and surrounding properties. What we are contemplating here tonight is making a $500,000 commitment with the developer, who is making a $14 million investment in Elmhurst to rid the community of an eyesore and replace it with a modern construction, 42,000 square foot health club facility and an 8,000 square foot outlot building with a drive-through Starbucks coffee shop as an anchor tenant. $500,000 is about a 3.5% contribution to the total investment that will bring in over $2 million in increased property tax to the community over the next 20 years, of which the net of $1.5 million will be a direct benefit to the redevelopment all of TIF 4. That's not a bad return on investment. The primary reason that this is a 15-year agreement is because it'll take 2 to 4 years to even generate and get paid an initial tax increment, and it is projected that the incentive will be fully earned in the 11th year of the increment generation. The best part of this incentive is that this is a revenue share, as nobody will benefit unless there is value created, and no one gets paid until Elmhurst does. If the project does not go forward, we are exactly where we are today, and I do not honestly believe that it will go forward without this collaboration. Thinking beyond the redevelopment alone, there will be new sales taxes as a result of this project. There will be 1,200 unique visits to the fitness center daily, and the coffee shop will attract some 500 to 700 customers each day. It seems very likely that some of these patrons will shop elsewhere in Elmhurst as they come and go. Sales tax generation and other economic benefits to Elmhurst are identified in our report and also highlighted in the developer's TIF incentive application, which is on board docs for your convenience. I would ask for your support of this report and the resultant redevelopment. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Dunn?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. This particular incentive request is actually the first one that we had after we've implemented and adopted our new TIF incentive policy. And Alderman York gave a great summary, a clear summary as to some of the benefits of this development project, some of the investments that the developer is making, and the cost of those. And looking at our incentive policy, there is a few items in there that make this a very favorable project to get behind. There's stipulations if there's a presence of extraordinary development or redevelopment costs, and it's specifically spelled out in remodeling and demolition or environmental remediation. We do have a situation on this particular property where the developer was aware there was some asbestos in the property, but there was significantly more than they had envisioned. I think the original estimate was about $200,000 for the asbestos remediation, and that has escalated to over $600,000. So that was a major remediation cost to take this site down in the proper manner, and improve the site for all of Elmhurst. There also another bullet point on the type of initiative or type of project where there's enhancements of streetscape and pedestrian experience, and Alderman York had mentioned that there was pedestrian-friendly features added to it after it was brought up in committee. Also improving public infrastructure. The developer put in some stormwater features for or bioswales to clean the first wash of any rain in the parking lot there. So those are things that are favorable features that are going to make this a community-friendly and very aesthetically pleasing property. Also in the policy, we talk about the assistance. Some basis of the assistance would be driven by an amount that would be necessary to provide the developer a reasonable rate of return on their particular project. In this market space, their normal returns are 13 to 15% on a project to get approval and to be successful with the project. And the initial cost structure and the return on this property was about 9%, which was quite a bit below the generally accepted return. And they're asking for this partnership, this incentive with by the city to get that return up from 9% to 10%. So those are some reasons why the committee and myself in particular felt this was a solid incentive to get this developer started on the project, and we don't want to risk having this property sit fallow for another couple years as it's been now. I hear that a lot from residents. What's going on with the Waverton? What's going on with the Waverton? Well, we have something going on. I think it's a great project, and I ask for the council's support on this particular recommendation. Thanks.
Alderman Hipskin?
So I support this report too. I think we've seen a lot of the numbers, but drive by it right now and see what's there. That's all you need to do. Drive by it, see what's there. Look at two old vans that have been, flat tires, chain link fence, and then envision, a 40,000 square foot new fitness center, coffee shop, Mariano's right next door. Drive by it and you see that, there's real potential there. I think back 25 years ago, driving down York Street. York Street is what, on the cover of a magazine, that's a picture that you want now of the theater, of all the thriving businesses, of all the people downtown. That's what we need on the TIF 4. That's what we need in that area. We need that kind of activity. And practically speaking, when I go to a health club, when I'm fortunate enough to go to a health club, what do I do right afterwards? If it's lunchtime, I go have a healthy lunch. Right next door is a place to go have a healthy lunch. If it's the morning time, I have a cup of coffee after I work out. Have a nice, it will bring a lot of activity to that area, and that area needs a lot of activity. It needs a lot of redevelopment, and, maybe 25 years from now, we'll see some other, quite a few more other businesses relocating up there because it is a thriving area. We need to start somewhere, and this is a very good deal for Elmhurst, and that's why I support it. Thank you.
Any other comments? Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. Tonight we are discussing a market-driven development that will no doubt result in a dramatic improvement over the site as it currently exists. The city will benefit greatly by the improvement. That said, I do not support the city's financial subsidy for this project. I believe the development, as it's been proposed, is one that the market can and should be able to support without government assistance. The site is in a prime location, adjacent to and visible from a major interstate highway, next to the highway's access ramps, on a street with very high traffic counts throughout the day, and across from Mariano's, which the city already invested in with the purpose of encouraging development in the surrounding area. One would expect the market to jump to develop the site, and in fact, the market did jump to develop the site. The Waverton Hotel closed for good in April 2013. The property was listed for sale by a very motivated seller shortly thereafter, and the seller received 3 purchase offers. Paragon's offer at $2.9 million was the one that was accepted by the seller. The developer has indicated to the city that the project has a financing gap of $500,000. I believe it's very hard to analyze financial data in a way to support or deny the existence of a gap. Assuming a gap exists, I think there are 2 obvious potential reasons for it: a dramatic underestimation of the costs of asbestos remediation and/or an overly aggressive acquisition price. The developer reported in multiple meetings, we've heard another alderman comment on this, that the actual cost of the asbestos remediation will be much significantly higher than originally estimated. And while those costs may be extraordinarily high and higher than they estimated, they should be of no surprise to the developer, as the presence of asbestos was clearly indicated in the site's offering memorandum. One would expect a buyer's offering price to be discounted by the cost to demolish any existing structures. This is the way the market worked for the Berteau Hospital site. I am concerned that in this case, the developer did not sufficiently discount their purchase offer, either because of their eagerness to secure the site for development and/or the property's location within a TIF district, and the assumption that TIF could be used to close any resulting gaps. Traditionally, TIF funds are used in areas that would not see development without the assistance available through the TIF. In those cases, it's reasonable to expect a development to receive some or all of the increment it generates. However, in Elmhurst, we are fortunate to have a significant amount of development that is entirely market-driven. This gives us an opportunity to use TIF funds for projects that don't have any potential non-governmental revenue source. The recently completed North York plan identifies a number of public improvements, including streetscaping, bridge enhancements, and stormwater improvements that could be funded through TIF. Because we have a TIF district that is already borrowing against itself to fund Mariano's and Hahn Street, and because we have many potential public projects identified, I think we would be wise to not subsidize any projects that should be and/or could be completely market-driven. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On occasion, I would bring up exactly what is going on with the Waverton development. It is a large source of concern for the 3rd and 2nd Ward, but all of Elmhurst, due to its blighted nature. And I say that word purposely, blighted. That is the definition of why a TIF would be put in place. This property is definitely the definition in the dictionary of blighted. The Waverton Hotel has been closed for many, many years and has only gotten worse and worse by every month that passes. I, as well as former Alderman Paula Pezza, requested this TIF for this very reason. This very reason is to provide incentive for developers to come in and take blighted areas and turn them into a nice new development that will help the whole business area, retail area as a whole. I've always questioned any type of TIF or sales tax incentive that has come across my desk on the city council. And I would kick myself if I did not question this one as well. I am not very happy with the dollar amount of $500,000 that is being proposed for technically an 8,000 square foot retail space. I'm not negating, though, the development of the proposed LA Fitness. That is a very important piece of this puzzle, and it will become a destination for many, many gym members and hopefully, as Alderman Hipskin already stated, they will visit some other businesses in the same area. One of the things that I would like to notate is when this proposal first came across city staff and city council, there was a range given of 41,000 to 45,000 square feet for the LA Fitness development. I still contest that I would like to see that development be 45,000 compared to the 41,000 square feet. The 50-50 percentage, as well as the 15 years, I've always challenged in other TIF and/or sales tax incentives as well. I still don't believe that 15 years is we should never be going 15 years for any type of incentive. Our sales tax incentive policy states 10 years except I'm having a hard time tonight, except on rare occasions or very little exceptions. And that's what I still believe. I have talked to staff offline on many occasions, as well as publicly on a couple occasions, about this development. I have vocalized my concerns to staff and aldermen on the committee about the drive-through location for this development and how there would be vehicular conflicts with the driveway that would go into the development. I also have brought up in regards to stormwater management concerns as well, that anybody who lives on the north side or drives through the north side knows that any heavy rainfall, the IDOT detention area overflows on the York Road and makes it impassable, and therefore those cars go through residential areas. With all that said, I would like to make a request to suspend the rules to ask 2 pointed questions to the developer about this development before moving forward.
1 second, Alderman Braham. Well, technically, you would want to make a motion to suspend the rules, yes?
Yes.
All right, 1 second before I ask for a second on that. Do we have a suspension of the rules? I think it's a supermajority, and that's what I'm double checking on Alderman Braham. What? Oh, I know, I'll ask for a second once I figure out, what do you call it? Suspend the rules. You find it, Alderman Levin?
Yes, it's GG.
What page? GG, okay. What page?
Suspension of rules? That's double G.
1 second, okay. 2/3. What's 2/3? Is that still the? Yeah, I don't count. I don't count. I get that a lot. So that's 9 1/3 alderman, which means it would be 10. I don't think we have a third alderman up here. So we have a motion to suspend the rules. And this is with the assumption that the developer may or may not want to answer these questions, but motion to suspend the rules, 2/3 of the aldermen present. Do we have a second on a motion to suspend the rules? Alderman Gutenkopf with a second. Is it no debate, or is it?
Doesn't say.
We have discussion. Is there discussion?
Doesn't say, so I'm going to allow discussion on this motion. Alderman York.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think we could maybe entertain the question on the dais from Alderman Braham and see if we could provide an answer that he's looking for before we have to suspend the rules.
Well, there's one reason to vote for or against this. Alderman Braham, do you wish to rescind your motion, or do you want to ask the question during this debate?
I do not want to rescind the motion.
Okay. So I take that as a no with your offer, Alderman York.
If you would like me to ask the question, but I will do that.
Well, let's get the let's get this vote through. Let's get this. We have a motion pending. Well, I'm going to have to call a roll call because I can't hear 9 1/3. Any other comments as it relates to Alderman Braham's motion to suspend the rules? Alderman Dunn.
I think that before I would vote for or against it, I would like to know what the questions are and if they have some validity in
Okay, fair question. Alderman Bram, you wish to share your questions?
Yes, and in all due respect to the committee members, I wanted the developer, if they so chose to speak to it, to be on record on 2 questions. I have asked both of these questions informally, I think to the committee and/or staff, I don't recall whom, but I wanted to hear for the record from the developer themselves. One of which, the rationale behind 41,000 versus 45,000 square feet, and the more poignant and directed question of, if this TIF incentive is not granted, will they still move forward with the development?
Okay. Any other comments as it relates to this motion? Motion to suspend the rules. Clerk Spencer, I'd ask you to call the roll on the motion to suspend the rules. This is a 2/3 majority. As I stated, that's 9 1/3 alderman, which we're going to round up to 10. That means that we have to have 10 ayes for this motion to pass. Clerk Spencer.
Graham.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Deuter.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Nay.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Gipskin.
No.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
No.
Onquist.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
No.
Kennedy.
No.
Mulliner.
No.
Wagner.
No.
It looks like 7 ayes and 7 nays.
7 ayes, 7 nays. I'm not required to break the tie as it failed to achieve the majority. Motion fails. On to the motion, the main motion, which is back to report 7.3. Paragon Tax Increment Financing Incentive Request Report. Any other comments or questions as it relates? Anyone who has not had an opportunity to speak at this point? You're on your honor, Alderman Gutenkopf. Have you not spoken yet?
I don't think I have.
As chair, I'm supposed to keep track of this. Alderman Gutenkopf.
I think that Alderman Bram had very valid questions, and I would like to hear the Finance Committee answer his questions.
Okay. Okay. 2 questions I heard were why 41,000 over 45,000, and but for this, would the project go forward? Alderman York, those are the 2 I have.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Yes, Alderman Bram and I talked about his first question, and the answer I gave him the other night is the same one that I'll provide tonight, and that's the fact that the parking regulations around a health club facility pretty much hold the size of that development where it is currently. Therefore, they really can't put any more square feet in there because there's no room for additional parking.
Okay, and then I think you stated it in your opening, but do you believe this would move forward without the incentive?
I do not believe, it's my opinion that it would not move forward without the incentive, and I can't obviously answer for the developer, but they more or less alluded to that in our committee meeting.
Okay, Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple thank yous first to the committee. I know the committee as a whole addressed this, took this issue up several times. There was a lot of back and forth. And so I respect the work, and I know you put a lot into it. Secondly, thank you, Chairman York, Vice Chairman Dunn, on the stormwater, attention to the stormwater. I think that's important to every project we undertake moving forward, as we've shown with whether it's Hahn Street or Addison Street, this project, or at the last Public Works Committee meeting, we discussed incremental stormwater at municipal parking lots. So it's important that we take that issue up with everything we do, so I appreciate that. The conversation, and Alderman Deuter was very eloquent in her dissension from the majority report, and that just shows me that the committee had a lively discussion, as it should, about the amount of money. I myself had a fairly long conversation with Chairman York about the issue of the developers assertion that they would walk from the project if they didn't get that level of support. So I think we've all, in our lifetime, at various points, whether it was buying a house, buying a car, some of us do it professionally in a negotiation where it becomes a game of chicken. And, you're negotiating back and forth, you're taking positions, you're moving, you're falling back, you're moving forward. That was the part I questioned, and Chairman York, who was part of those conversations the whole time, I was not. I know he feels strongly the developer would walk if we don't do this. So I'm going to support the majority report, and mainly because if the developer does walk, and you may or may not believe the developer will walk if we don't grant this, I'm going to side with the majority and say the majority of the public, the Finance Committee would say they will walk. What happens if they do? If we don't pass this and they do walk? I'm certain another developer will come along. But when, the scope of the project, the delay, and I don't want to risk it. So I'm willing to move forward with this. There's always a certain level of buyer's remorse. Could I have done less? Could I have done more? I'm comfortable with the $500,000, that money. The developer won't get that money until we start getting money. We're not writing a check up front. As that property builds value, we would be sharing in it with the developer as the property increases in value. I think that's very fair, and for those reasons, I will support the majority report.
Okay, Alderman Levin.
At the last Development Planning and Zoning Committee, we had a presentation by our consultant on the North York Plan, and its ties sort of helped for me to see how all of this ties together. And what we're trying to do through the TIF is to spur development going north along York. I've thought a lot about how I felt on this particular incentive. I feel that we've got Mariano's, that's our main anchor there in terms of this development. I second what Alderman Healy said in terms of when we are trying to get development going now. Is it the best project for that particular location? I don't know. I think it's a good project. I think that getting those two properties next to each other, the Mariano's and this LA Fitness, will form a very firm anchor. I don't think we can wait to see what comes along in the future. It's not, as a city, our residents, or I should say our revenues, are primarily property tax and sales tax. So it may seem when we talk about what's going to generate sales tax, so what? That's what keeps our property taxes low, is our ability to increase sales taxes. In 2009, I believe it was, we had a significant property tax increase because the economy had soured and we had to keep operations going even though there were significant budget cuts by increasing the property tax. And since that time, because our sales taxes have been increasing, we have maintained, from the city perspective, we've had 0% increases most years. We've had a couple, one or two, where they were negative property tax increases, and I think we had one property tax increase, a small one, since then. So we cannot understate how important it is for us to have the development along that corridor that not only beautifies the area and makes it a more attractive area, but that increases the economic return for us. So I think more pats on the back for you guys. I know you went through a lot of the analysis, but I thought about it carefully. I think it's the right amount. I think it's not excessive. Could it be 400? Could it be 600? Again, we've got a council of 14. Someone has to make the recommendation. It's reasonable. The payback provisions, I think, are favorable to the city. We're not outlaying any cash. And I think this is the next big step towards what I hope are other steps that go down the road to making North York a true gateway coming in from the north. So I will support this.
Alderman Polomsky.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had many questions for members of the Finance Committee on this request. It didn't fly through committee, and I believe future TIF requests for TIF 4, revenue sharing, are not guaranteed and will be highly scrutinized. I didn't arrive at my decision with ease. We've learned that this use is compatible, as Alderman Levin mentioned, with our review of the North York development plan, that it's compatible with the TIF 4 plan and with the interests of the community. When looking at the development as a whole, it fits. It might be better if we could have consolidated the properties to the west, but we're not in a position to do that yet, or maybe at any time. This lot, like the one where Mariano sits, has been determined to be a catalyst site for the area, so it would be something we would expect to see a greater revenue share for this property, not only for its site, but for its placement and timing of the TIF, that it's near the beginning, that maybe as time goes on, or definitely as time goes on, we would be intervening less, and with other parcels, we'd be intervening less, that these properties are the ones that are going to be triggering more development. But still undecided. What makes me fall on the side of support is, one, knowing that the revenue share is projected to last 11 years, not throughout the lifetime of the TIF. And also that the original request was for over 1.5 million, but was brought down to a number necessary for a viable development, and what we have been told is necessary to make this work. So I want to thank the committee and the staff, and I look forward to more vibrancy on the north side. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments? Alderman Bram.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm disappointed not to be able to ask those questions of the developer specifically, but with that said, even though that I do have concern over the dollar amount, as Alderman Polumsky just stated, the developer came in at a number of $1.5 million of a request, and to see it come down to, significantly down to $500,000 is of great relief, but I also wanted to make sure that we are making sure that we're not giving away too much money ultimately of the taxpayers. Alderman Healy's points are well stated. You never really know if whatever dollar amount you provide as an incentive, if that will be enough, too much, or not enough, and they will walk away. Due to the fact that this is in the TIF, due to the fact that this is probably the biggest blighted piece of property in the North York TIF number 4, I am in full support of this. I look forward to seeing the Waverton Hotel come down and the start of a brand-new development of an LA Fitness, hopefully the Starbucks, as well as some additional retail in the retail strip mall as well. Thank you.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
York.
Aye.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Onquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Joyder.
No.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Polumsky.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
13 ayes, 1 nays.
13 ayes, 1 nay, motion carries. That report is approved. I think I speak for everyone when we're looking forward to having that old building come down and seeing some new development. So welcome to Elmhurst. You can see we vet things very thoroughly. Agenda item 8, reports and recommendations of appointed elected officials. 8.1, Mayor Morley. A couple of items of note. As I mentioned during the last City Council meeting, and as Alderman Hipskin announced, and we'll be talking a little bit more about him later, there is soon to be a vacancy in the 4th Ward in about a half an hour, if my calculations are correct. I am putting out a public request for anybody and everybody who is interested. I didn't think I'd have to put this caveat out there, but you do have to live in the 4th Ward. I did get that question. I have about 7 applications in hand, and I've got about 5 other, hey, Mayor, I'm going to turn in an application. So we'll see how that gets me, how far that gets us. But I would ask that all applications be in no later than close of business here at City Hall on the 19th. That's this Friday. So looking forward to any additional applications. It is my intent to meet with anybody and everybody who does apply. I have also want to announce at this time, as has been mentioned a couple of times, we have had a couple of meetings here at City Hall as it relates to some stormwater issues in certain pockets of town, and a couple of the aldermen have announced additional meetings that we're going to have moving forward. That has prompted a number of aldermen to approach me, and in fact, most recently, Alderman Polumsky and I were having a conversation with regard to this. For the request, and at this point I think the request is at 8 aldermen, maybe even higher, to have a citywide meeting. I know that I have talked to members of the Public Works Department, and Chairman Kennedy has to deal with a lot of questions at the beginning of every meeting, sometimes to the tune of an hour and a half. That having been said, Alderman Kennedy, among others, is requesting, and I support, and have been working with city staff, we are going to have a citywide flood mitigation update meeting October 15th. So that's 1 month from today, October 15th. The plan is to update everybody who attends what the city has been doing over the last year, and maybe some historical perspective over the last 4 years. We will be issuing a press release. We will also be working on an agenda, and it would invite everybody. It's going to entail a general update to the public, but then also we're going to have, to be as efficient as possible, we're going to have what I call breakout sessions for individual areas in town. So, for example, the folks on Pine might not be terribly interested on what's happening at Bryan Junior High and vice versa. So we'll be working with city staff. We'll be making some announcements, but 1 month from today here at City Hall, we're going to have a citywide, basically flood update. That does not preclude or exclude any of the other individual meetings that are going on, and those individual meetings and the aldermen who are working on those will be in contact with those folks as well. Don't know yet, Dan. But we will be issuing a press release that will have that in it. And last but not least, and I'm remiss, I tried to find it on my email, but I could not. And last Thursday, so 9/11, a somber day, it was my great pleasure to attend a Korean War veterans reunion here in the city of Elmhurst. They actually chose the city of Elmhurst for their reunion, and I would say the average age in the room was about 85. And they had come from as far as Florida, and their reunions every year are all over the United States. But they had nothing but great things to say about Elmhurst. And it was just my honor and pleasure to be there. And they're just the greatest group of guys. And they said, Mayor, we're the forgotten war. Please, whenever you have an opportunity, remind folks of what we've done. So I'm doing that here tonight as a promise I made last Thursday, and I thank them for their service. And now, City Manager Grabowski, that's it for me.
Thank you. I have 2 items before Dr. Burke updates the council. First, last council meeting, you recall I announced that we had hired a new Public Works Director. Mr. Howard Killian is with us tonight. Howard, if you wouldn't mind raising your hand. So we're happy to have him here, and if you get the opportunity tonight, I know it might be a little late, to introduce yourself, please do. We look forward to Howard joining us September 29th. The second item I have, the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference has put out kind of a challenge to municipalities. At the dinner meeting on Wednesday of this week, myself and Chief Ruth will be presenting a municipal innovation. There was a challenge put out to, it'll be a voted contest that night. There's 14 municipalities that are making presentations, and we are making a presentation on the neighborhood roll calls, which I thought was a very innovative idea. And so we'll be looking to spread the good word and also take some in from the other municipalities who present on their innovative ideas to see what we can possibly bring to Elmhurst. With that, if you would like to introduce Dr. Burke.
Well, let me get reports and recommendations out of the way from anybody else. Any other reports and recommendations before we go into Christopher Burke, who's here? Okay, good. Well, I mean, very good. Let's move on. We have Christopher Burke from Christopher Burke Engineering here, as I believe most of the people here in the audience are aware, and as is folks on the dais here. Christopher Burke Engineering is the group we've been working with for going on 4 years now as we tackle this ongoing problem. One of the things that recently we've asked Christopher Burke to do, based on some flooding in newer places, is to concentrate on 3 areas in town that were not covered in the initial Burke report. So with that having been said, I will turn it over to Mr. Burke.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the things that I'm going to do tonight is give you an overview of the 3 study areas. Because we're going to go into the communities and talk to the groups individually, I'm going to give an overview rather than the details. Obviously, the study methodology and the procedures that we use are exactly the same that you saw in the previous presentations, the ones that we did the computer modeling. We looked at 3 areas. We looked at the existing conditions to make sure that the computer models that we generated were accurately depicting what happened in 2013, the April event. Looked at the existing level for flood protection proposed for each of these areas, and develop concept plans for identifying improvements to eliminate or reduce the level of flooding in each one of these areas. As I've said it up here many times, talking about the need, and I think that you guys know we can't send the problem downstream. We have to mitigate for these problems, and we've tried to do that in the projects that we've just been working on here. These were not studied in the original study, and the idea, as I said, was to determine what would be necessary to provide a 100-year level flood protection. And I should also point out, we looked at what would happen if you had the 2013 flood again with those projects in place. So we wanted to show what level of protection. Those of us that like these things, this shows you a history of the rainfall. We had over 7 inches in about 18 hours. Very hard hit storm, hit the entire region, caused lots of flooding throughout the Chicagoland area. So what we did is we looked at these computer models. I will not get into the specifics of those, although we're going to go through on the different meetings specific information as to what events we looked at, how we did this, and all the information we did when we made our original presentation in 2012. We call these 3 areas the Walnut, Evergreen, Myrtle area, the College View, and finally the Crestview Park area. Let me just, it's disappearing here. Obviously, Area 3 is not tributary. This is the first one that we've talked about in this room that's tributary actually to Addison Creek, which is a tributary of the Des Plaines River. Most of the things that you've heard us talk about are relative to Salt Creek. So the area number 3 drains eastward to Addison Creek. Let's go right into the study areas so we can start discussing the various components. In purple here, and purple, it disappears really fast. In purple is the storm sewer that serves this area. The area includes almost 600, specifically 568 acres. It's a very large area. In purple, the 60 to 72 inch diameter sewer. And unlike most of the areas that are tributary to Salt Creek and Elmhurst, this system flows by gravity into Salt Creek. It's influenced by the water elevations. As the water elevations get up higher, obviously you're going to see backup in this area. There is a small floodplain associated with the quarry, and let me just go back here just to make sure everybody knows the quarries in your lower left-hand side. Armitage is up on the top. York is roughly almost on the east side, and so just give you an idea, First is down below on the south. So that's the area that we looked at. We have sewer atlases for this area. We simulated the capacity of these sewer areas based on the flows that are being generated. It's no surprise, and some of the speakers this evening talked about areas that we've identified here, including Elm. During intense rainfall, stormwater ponds, because the storm sewer gets full and there's no place for the water to go downhill. The highly pressurized storm sewers result in several manhole lids being blown off. Some of the residents have provided us some interesting videos on that. It eventually leads to structural flooding of the homes because the water has no place to go. This is a profile, and is there another pointer? This is a profile, and what we did is we stretched out that pink area, and on the bottom here is the profile of the storm sewer, and up on top are the streets. And the blue area indicates water that has accumulated in the streets because the water has no place to go. The issue here, of course, is that we want to reduce this water elevation, and what we want to do is the storm sewer can't capture it, so we want to look at measures to take this water level on these streets and bring them down. So what we did is we stretched that storm sewer, and here is the capacity, here's the storm sewer, and when it gets filled, the water starts coming up through manholes and accumulating on the streets. This is the inundation area that occurred in the April 2013 flood. You can see there's areas, widespread flooding, similar to what we've done, just to get everybody familiar with how much volume is sitting on the streets. This is after the storm sewers are filled. There's 27 acre-feet of water that is sitting there and needs to be addressed if the objective is to provide the desired level of protection. All right, so street and home flooding, and we had at least 2.2 feet of standing water at low points. 76 homes were in that flood inundation area based on the topographic information that the county has. So that's a considerable number of homes that are subject to flooding from an event like the 2013. This gives you a summary of how many of those homes. Obviously, it has a capacity up till about the 25-year. When you hit the 50-year event and the 100-year event, you start picking up more homes. And as I just said, there were more homes that were flooded by the extreme event of 2013, which has exceeded the 100-year. We looked at various options of providing flood protection and flood relief to these areas. This is a result of our evaluation, and we simulated these alternatives that I'm going to show. This is the first one. We simulated those with a computer model, models to see what the result was. This option includes construction of a very large storm sewer that would intercept the waters, take the waters down to, in this case, a city-owned site. We'd have to excavate it out. We'd have to put steep side slopes, and we're trying to create about 15 acre-feet of gravity-drained flood storage on that. That gets you a 100-year level of protection for the study area, and results in only a half a foot just above the curb line of flooding if the April 2013 event. This obviously requires the city using their site here and extension of the storm sewer, as I mentioned. The other option, that's about $5.4 million, including the storm sewer, the excavation, the storage, and the associated work that goes into that. We also looked at another option because the county, we've met with the county. The county talked about the opportunity to use the quarry to dump the water in here. Obviously, I want you to understand this is a very large storm sewer by the time we get into the quarry, but rather than going into the city-owned site, this would take the water into the quarry. At this location, there's concrete that has been part of a outwash, and we would use that and discharge the water into the quarry. We'd have to create about 20 acre-feet of storage in the quarry because that is what we would displace by putting this new relief sewer in there. That would mean that we would have to go on the west lobe, which is not shown on this aerial photograph, excavate down and create that storage. The compensatory storage, and we'll call it that for right now, would be excavated in this area. As many of you know, this was an area that was used as a landfill for clean construction debris. It was at one time a quarry. They filled it in. We would excavate out, if this is the option the city intends on pursuing. The idea here would be to excavate out and compensate for that additional water that will be discharged down in this area and into the quarry. Obviously, this would require some coordination not only with the county, but also IEPA, because there is a permit that is outstanding for the a landfill that was at one time constructed here. So what we would do is have a safe haven for the
Mr.
water
Burke,
discharging into that. Yes?
we have a question. I'd like to, Alderman Healy?
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Burke, the $4.9 million cost estimate for the quarry option, does that include the excavation of the west lobe of the quarry that we'd have to do to provide that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. So this is the option. We have to put in the relief sewer in either of the two options. One would be using the city-owned property for storing the water temporarily. The other option would be using the Elmhurst quarry owned by the county for the creation of that storage. The second area that we looked at is the College View study area. This area is slightly less than the previous one. It's 427 acres. It goes through a very large diameter storm sewer along Utley Road, and this, unlike the previous one, has a pumping station which is limited to about 200 CFS, and that starts pumping when the Salt Creek levels get high. So this particular option this area has a relatively large storm sewer, and it has a pumping capacity as well. There are two main flood problems located within the College View study area. The first one is the depressional area near Berkeley, between Utley and Elm Park Avenue. The depressional area, the other second one is the depressional area located at the intersection of Berkeley Avenue and Alma, and adjacent to York Community High School. I think we heard a little bit about that earlier. During really intense rainstorms, the sewers fill up. There's no overland flow route to take the water away from this area. It results in structural flooding and low-lying areas. This is the area that was inundated in 2013. I'm sure it's been inundated in other events as well. There's about 14 acre-feet of water that is being shown to not be able to be conveyed downstream, and results in ponding and inundation of various homes in this area. During the 2000 event, there was about 2.8 feet of street ponding, and 21 homes were identified to be within that flood inundation area. This shows you the actual simulations. You start picking up damages at the 25-year and accelerates up to about 17 with the 100-year. We looked at various options, and it should be no surprise that one of the options is taking open space and using it for storage. The first time I ever came to the city, when everybody asked me what I would recommend, and it was using open space for storage. Those of the aldermen remember that presentation. In this particular case, the option that we've identified is a combination of storage and green areas to create additional temporary storage of water, same way that we've talked about with the Park District and school sites, and the construction of a storm sewer to have additional capacity to take the water downstream. There's also some nuanced areas, including a backflow preventer and other features here. The idea is to provide that 100-year level protection. I also want to point out that if you had the 2013 storm event, you'd only have about 0.4 feet of flooding in the streets. The conceptual project cost estimate for this is $3.34 million. The last project that I want to talk about is the Crestview Park study area. This area is much smaller than the two. It's broken up into two parts, the north and south side. The north has 84 acres, the south has 40 acres. They all head, as I mentioned earlier, to a tributary of Addison Creek and onto the Des Plaines River. They have to pass through cemeteries, prior to them getting to any reservoir. That obviously presents some constraints because some of these routes are not adequately sized, and we can't assume that we can just pass the water downstream into the cemeteries. There are 2 study areas, as I mentioned, and we know that there's flooding in the depressional area along the northern section of Howard, immediately south of Crestview. The south study areas of Van Auken, Howard Avenue, and Emroy, north of Lake Street, and immediately west of the Elm Lawn Cemetery. Once again, you've heard this before, there are no overland flow routes to take the water away, and it results in the inundation shown at these 2 sites. So what we looked at here is the flooding surrounded this area in here, and down below on near the south side. This is a relatively small volume. We were talking about 20 acre-feet before. This is 1 and 4 acre-feet respectively. The significance flooding, 2.1 feet is the inundation area in the north side. About 1.9 feet is the inundation in the south study area. North has 2 homes, south has 13 homes. This is a summary, 15 homes up to the 100-year, the combination of the 2. We looked at 2 areas that could be excavated out. A relatively small amount of storage would be necessary here, but because that ground is high, that requires more excavation, in this case 4 feet, lowering down the Crestview Park 4 feet, still like what we were talking before, providing gravity drainage and the opportunity for this continued use of the site. This gets you 100-year level protection and a relatively minor amount of flooding in the 2013 type event. The other option we looked at was alternative 2, and this was to create, put a storm sewer in there and 4 acre-feet of gravity drain flood storage, and this increased the level of protection to the 100-year for the 13 homes and results in 0.3 feet of flooding. This particular one is about $4 million, and the other one was about $300,000. So you can see the range of costs for the 2 study areas that we've identified. This is a summary of the areas, and as I mentioned, I'll go into a lot more detail as to how we came to the solutions that we did and the procedures what we used when we meet with the individual groups. As a summary, there's relatively a large number of homes in the Walnut, Evergreen, Myrtle area. We identified 2 alternatives, one using the city site, the other one using the site of the quarry, and that would provide benefit to all those homes and would range from $5 million to $5.4 million. On College View, we identified an option that would alleviate the flooding for 17 homes, require, like we've shown other places, the storage in the green space, and that would be about $3.34 million. And finally, Crestview Park, there's 2 options, and those range from $300,000, which will protect 2, to about $4 million to protect the 13. So I just wanted to give a quick overview of what we've done. And as I said, we'll give a lot more detail when we meet with these groups individually.
Okay. And I know this information's online. Is this online yet, this presentation itself?
Not yet, it will be tomorrow.
Okay. This presentation will be posted tomorrow. I know the information that's in it is already online in various forms. Any comments for Dr. Burke while we got him? Alderman Bram, yes?
Well, actually, not necessarily for Dr. Burke. I just want to make sure that the Northside residents understand. I already mentioned it this evening in regards to the flooding of York Road, and therefore the overspill from York Road to Michigan, especially in down Lake Street frontage. I believe, and City Manager Grabowski can correct me, but it was deemed by the city that it is not a necessity for Dr. Burke to look into that area because the city deemed that to be a IDOT issue of that detention area, and the city will be working with IDOT to correct that, correct?
Yes,
I think you got it correct, Alderman Bram. Any other questions for Dr. Burke? Alderman Levin? No. Yes?
Well, I just think it's important for either you or Dr. Burke to explain, because for years, we've been telling the public, that quarry's not ours. We can't dump anything into it, and Dr. Burke took the Evelyn Wood speed speaking course, and I heard what you said, but I think it's a very important point that either Dr. Burke or the mayor should explain why this is different.
Let me give it a shot first. Inevitably, whenever there's flooding in town, someone brings up the quarry. The quarry originally was purchased by privately, and then purchased from a private family about 30 years ago by the county. And it's owned by the county, and its sole purpose at this point is to keep the creek in its banks. So in 1987, we had a massive flood that flooded the southwest corner of Elmhurst. Thousands and thousands of homes filled up. Along with a lot of pipes that were put in on Spring Road, one of the other things that was done is that the quarry was utilized. So when the creek rises to a certain point, there's a concrete weir running along the side of the creek. There's no button to push. Just when the creek gets up to a certain level, it spills into the quarry, and it keeps the creek in its banks all the way through Elmhurst, Oak Brook, Western Springs, whoever else is down there. That's the role of the creek. There is a gate at one corner of the weir. If they feel they have to pull more water off faster, they can do it, but it does come off automatically even without any human intervention. And that's what the creek's been doing for 30-some-odd years. When we were faced with a flooding problem, one other thing, part of those improvements as a result of the 87 flood was a lot of the stormwater. Christopher Burke mentioned that about the top third of Elmhurst, the northeast corner of Elmhurst flows one way toward the highway. The remaining two-thirds of Elmhurst flows down toward the creek and all the way down toward the south end of Elmhurst. We have 8 pumping houses, yes?
So
8 gravity-fed storm sewers that head toward the creek, but when it gets to a certain level, the valves close so that the creek doesn't back up into those, and these pumps go on. And we pump X amount, whatever that number is, 50,000 cubic feet per pump per minute, something of that nature, into the creek. That is the maximum. We have a maximum amount that we're allowed to pump into the creek during any storm event, so that we don't flood Oak Brook and everyone else down the line. That is how the creek functions, and that is how the quarry functions, and that is how those pumps function as we speak. In 2010, when we started looking at this problem, we approached the quarry. In fact, we approached the county. We've been in contact with the county pretty regularly since 2010, and initially our efforts to figure out a way to incorporate the quarry met with, how can I put this? Resistance. We couldn't seem to find a way, and part of that is that part of what the county's supposed to do, call it their creed, call it whatever you want to call it, is that their stormwater projects, from a budgetary standpoint, have to benefit a big chunk of DuPage County. And some of the stuff that we were approaching them with only benefited Elmhurst. However, we never closed the door. We've been in constant contact with them. And the big thing of note that Dr. Burke mentioned today is in the west lobe of the quarry. So it's the quarry split in half by West Avenue. On the west side is the west lobe. If you have an opportunity to look into that west lobe, you're going to see kind of a gentle slope on the north part of that west lobe. And it looks like a grassy hill, but really what it is construction material, debris, and other stuff that has been filled and put there as landfill, and I think it's capped with some clay, and then there's grass over it. What we're entertaining now, and we have been in contact, I've personally been in contact with the elected officials at the county, the chairman, and various members of the Stormwater Committee, is to look at it from a different angle and potentially allow the city to excavate in the quarry, which is owned by DuPage County. But at our expense, we'll go in, we excavate some of that area. How much is to be determined, and whether or not we actually can do it is to be determined. It's going to go before the Stormwater Committee shortly at the county. But the idea is that we excavate, let's just say it's 20 acre feet. We have then purchased or created that excess capacity in the quarry. What can we use it for? Who knows? Maybe it's the Myrtle Evergreen folks, and we can pipe something over there. Maybe it's something that we create as much storage as possible, and we can put more water in the quarry down south. But that's TBD. We do have it. With the help of Dr. Burke and his company, we are putting it before the Stormwater Committee at DuPage County, and we're hoping we'll make some progress. So, Alderman Levin.
Mayor, thank you for that explanation. I think it's important. And the one question I had is, when I look at the number of homes protected, not only in this study area, but in the others, there's a wide range of costs per home. You know, some of them are, you know, 150,000, some are 100,000, some are more. Is it a political decision strictly, or is there some sort of professional guide in terms of what is an appropriate amount to spend per home?
I think it would be, I don't want to call it would be a policy issue that the elected officials should look at. And what we try to do is give you the solution and allow you to look at the different opportunities and make a decision based on that.
Okay. Alderman Gutenkopf, then I'll go to Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Dr. Burke, all of your solutions are, I think, what the city charged you to do, find open space to store water. And we know that there's been an awful lot of work in recent years and looking for...
Alderman Gutenkopf? I
yeah.
can't hear you. Could you?
Sorry.
Thank you.
I can't turn my head and talk to Dr. Burke, talk to my mic. As I understand it, the city charged you with finding open space as one of the primary ways we're looking to store water. And there's been an awful lot of work in recent years in looking for solutions that incorporate a broader variety of ways to move water and store water underground, particularly permeable streets that include completely rebuilding the infrastructure under the streets and incorporating other ways to convey the water there. And particularly when I look at the cost per home for some of these areas where we're storing smaller amounts of water, is this a solution that we could be exploring in Elmhurst, and what kinds of cost variables would be involved in those in those options?
Sure. And just to be clear, we looked at all sorts of options, and as you recall, we included green infrastructure as a component, an important component of you taking out clear water from your sanitary sewer. We said the only way you're ever going to do it is get people to, I put in rain gardens to trap the water on site, allow it to infiltrate. But we also took a look, and we will have a slide in our meeting that identifies the options, because a lot of people in the original task force said, what happens if we put in permeable streets? How much storage can we get? And that's why we put the scale up there. We're looking at 20 acre feet. You can get about, for every mile of roadway, about an acre foot of permeable roadway, an acre foot of storage. So we have a daunting task here. Did I get that number right, Luke? And so we looked at that, and we certainly will talk about that in great detail, Diane, at the localized meetings.
So I just want to make sure I understand that. 1 mile of roadway, you can get about 1 acre foot of storage.
Pardon? Assuming for half the street that you're able to put the green infrastructure, because the other infrastructure down below.
So that assumes that you're sort of clustering the other street infrastructure on one side and using the other side of the street as the storage component.
As a general rule, yes. And we vetted this with the people that were discussing this, and we'll be happy to share those numbers with you on the meeting.
Alderman Healy.
Thank you, Mayor. Question, I guess in general, not necessarily to Dr. Burke, but I know it was mentioned a couple times tonight about the York High School situation, and specifically the $1 million. I want to make sure I understand correctly, and because it is a fairly old situation, that $1 million is a payable from the school district to the city of Elmhurst, because when the high school was added on to, instead of adding compensatory stormwater, the school opted to pay fee in lieu of. Is that correct? And that fee in lieu of came out to $1 million?
City Manager Grabowski.
That is correct.
And that $1 million is still, I'll call it on our books in terms of the school district owes us the money and that $1 million would go into, or is accounted for in the stormwater fund, maintenance fund, whatever we'd want to call it. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Dunn.
Just a clarification on the quarry project. The report that was in board docs showed that as a $3.1 million effort, and then your latest figure is about $5 million. What's going on there?
Thank you. That did not include the 20 acre-feet of storage in that was prepared before we met with the county and required the additional storage to be put in there. Thank you for asking that question.
Alderman Gutenkauf?
I got lost halfway through that
It
question.
it was for us creating the additional storage, yes?
Yeah.
Can I add, though?
Yeah.
Originally, we had posted a report from last week that had a lesser number in that solution. The update that Dr. Burke had on here included excavating the 20 acre feet. So we will update that on board docs report.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other comments, questions? Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. Just a clarifying question. I think you talked about the amount of water that would still remain in the 2013 flood even after projects like you've proposed. For the Walnut, Evergreen, Myrtle area, was it a half a foot in either case? Or am I remembering that wrong?
For both options, yes.
So why, I would have thought if you have larger storage, it's 15 acre feet versus 20 acre feet, I would think that remaining water would be different.
The pipe sizes are the same. The pipe sizes that we showed were the same. So that's providing the benefit and the height lowering of the water. So it has nothing, the volume is not the issue, it's the volume that we needed to offset the impacts of those two. We were looking at putting 15 in one and 20, approximately 20 acre feet in the quarry. But the volume, the benefit, these are at the downstream end versus the upstream end, like some of the other projects that we've been talking about. But the elevation differences were about the same, a half a foot for both those options.
Alderman Levin?
I'll ask you, Doctor, for a very uneducated question here. I look at some of these, and when the cost is over $300,000 per home for the fix, has there been some consideration of buying properties instead of moving them so far away, but taking out the properties and using them for water storage?
I noticed the look. I think that's more of a policy City of Elmhurst question than the option that Dr. Burke has proposed. It's really, would we want to purchase this versus spending on that? Would we consider purchasing?
Well, Mike, the question is it an alternative that was looked at that might be cheaper? Then we have to make a decision, but I guess we'll wait till we get to a policy decision.
I think that's where it is. Any other questions? Alderman Deuter.
Just another clarifying question. The report, let's see, this is on page 6, talking about the Walnut, Evergreen, Myrtle area. There's a comment, you've mentioned that the system there is gravity fed all the way to the creek. There's a statement in the report that says during extreme storm events, the water level of Salt Creek rises rapidly, which reduces the capacity of the storm sewer system. Can you just describe a little bit more what you mean by that statement?
What happens is the pipe characteristics, the ability of a pipe to drain changes when it has a free outlet, like a hose that you discharge here. There's nothing to resisting it. Contrasted to you putting that hose underwater, it does not have the same capacity as a hydraulic head that it's resisting its ability to drain. And that's what's happening when you have the elevations on Salt Creek rising to a certain point. It lessens or decreases the ability of those pipes to convey water and resulting in the backing up of the water in the pipes.
Alderman Deuter.
Does that make this an area where you would consider a pumping station, or would that not be appropriate in this area for?
We're limited to how much can be discharged by pumping stations into Salt Creek, so we looked at an option that we thought was more feasible and more likely to get permitted.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I have one, Dr. Brooke, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. You had mentioned earlier that to store 1 acre feet of water in the streets, in essence, half of a street, because you have to put the utilities somewhere, that would take 1 mile for a permeable street with storage underneath. And I know every street's different, but do you have a ballpark cost of what 1 mile of street would cost for 1 acre feet of storage?
I don't want to guess, but the assumptions that we made, just to be clear, we looked at, rather than concrete or asphalt roadways, you'd have to have permeable pavers, permeable asphalt, or permeable concrete, and we are assuming 3 feet of stone under that would hold the water. But we've identified that cost, and I can provide it at the next meeting.
I appreciate that. Okay. Any other comments? Alderman Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to point out, and maybe Chris Burke can corroborate this. In the original Burke study, it basically said about $4 million per mile for underground storage for pervious pavement. So unless that's changed significantly.
We'll report, we'll get an update on what those numbers would be.
Okay. Alderman Deuter.
I just forgot my question. Oh, and thank you. In 2013, the Walnut, Myrtle, Evergreen area had 76 homes that were flooded, or in your blue area. Your numbers that you run talk about a 100-year storm and being able to provide relief to all 52 homes affected by the 100-year storm. Can you just talk about the difference between the 76 homes that were affected in 2013 and the 52, and what that means for the other? The difference between 76.
I believe in these options, all the homes that are flooded in 2013 are provided a level protection.
They are. So would it be fair? I think when we do the cost per home estimates, we look at these numbers and we think, it's $5 million divided by 52. Would it be accurate to say it's $5 million divided by 76 in terms of the cost per home?
That's one way, yes.
Okay, any other questions? Alderman Healy.
I'm sorry, I'm confused now. So the number of homes affected was 76, not 52?
Yes, and let me pull that. During the, yes. In this particular case, we identified that there were 76 homes that were flooded within that blue area that was indicated earlier, that's 76 homes. We looked at the level of protection that would be provided for the 100-year, but we also, and this is something we added on for those of you that had the other version, we looked at how much, the elevation would be in 2013 in terms of that flood event occurring. And we would free up and eliminate the flooding from all those. You may recall we didn't look at this in our previous study because our previous study was completed before the 2013 flood occurred. So, but yes, in this particular case, all the homes that would be flooded in the 2013 flood event would be removed from the threat of flooding with this project.
So that chart should be updated then?
Yeah, we can append it, and what we do is just show that what we want to do is just include the 2013, the number of houses that are flooded in 2013, and identify all those that are removed in 2013 flood.
Alderman Healy?
Okay, so I'm not sure. It's not feeling right. So the way I look at it, and I think it's important we get the number of homes right, not necessarily because of a cost per home per se, because I don't think, that's not how I'm going to look at it per se. But I think we're going to be making some big decisions, and we need to know exactly how many homes we're going to be affecting. I look at it as that 52 homes, if we provide a 100-year level of protection, if 76, that tells me that April 2013 event was something much larger than a 100-year event.
Yes.
So if we provide a 100-year level, so what you're proposing is at a 100-year level, or it's large enough to incorporate what happened in April of 2013?
Yes. It's large enough to accommodate the 2013 event as well.
So then I think it is as simple as amending that chart to show 76.
Yes.
Okay, clear? Alderman Hipskin.
So, I don't know if you know this offhand, but for the audience and for my recollection, the last 3 flood events, when were they? And were they 100, 250, 500-year storms? Because a 100-year storm doesn't mean it happens every 100 years, it's a level. So what were those the last 3 major flood events? What were they?
They were events that came very close to or exceeded, in some cases, the 100-year. And the 100-year, I think you just said it correctly, has a 1% of chance of occurring each and every year. That's a much better chance than anybody has to win the lottery or any other drawing. But that's a level of protection that's commonly used in water resources engineering.
So follow up, the last 3 events were what, 100, 300, 200?
You know, I had a slide. Each one was a little bit different because some had a shorter duration and some had a longer duration. We had that chart, if you recall, that identified each one of those events, and I don't want to guess here. I can get you that. We have that specific slide, and in the effort to be brief, I cut that out.
Okay.
But I will have that on Thursday.
All right, any other questions? Any other questions? One more question. Alderman Deuter.
Thank you, Mayor. In this area that we're talking about here, the half a foot that would remain based on the 2013 level of flooding, is that the most water at the kind of the highest point? So, or is that somehow spread so that in low-lying areas that pools and it would be higher than other areas?
That's a height in the low-lying areas.
So based on your model, the highest the water would get in the 2013, with a rain like the 2013 rain, would be 6 inches.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Alderman Kennedy.
I actually have a statement, Mr. Mayor, if I could. I just want, I'm just going to ask Chris Burke when he does the neighborhood meetings, just to highlight the fact that there are 3 types of flooding. There's overland flooding, which this study is looking at. There's seepage due to foundation issues, and then there's sanitary sewer backup. And these projects, although very good, they cover one of those 3 points. And so residents all need to understand how they are flooding and then understand what steps they can take to address those issues. So if your problem is related to sanitary sewer backup, you have options related to a check valve, you have options related to an overhead sewer. There's a number of things that can be done, but fundamentally I want everybody to understand this covers one of those 3 areas. Okay? Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Dr. Burke, for your time. We'll see you around City Hall. As a reminder, we've got on the 18th of this month, the I'll call it the Walnut Myrtle Evergreen individual meeting here. Crestview on the 30th. We've got, separate announcement, but definitely stormwater related. The Park District is holding a community-wide meeting as it relates to the ask that the city has asked them on their projects. They are holding their meeting on October 1st at the Abbey at 7 o'clock. And then, as I announced earlier, the October 15th is when we're going to do kind of a larger meeting here at City Hall. Certainly that will include the College View challenges that we're faced with, but I know in talking to the 2 aldermen who have been working on that, we anticipate probably an additional breakout at some other time, but we're going to be working on that. So those are the dates of the meetings coming up as it relates to stormwater here in the city of Elmhurst. Okay, on to agenda item number 9. This is a resolution 9.1, and before I ask for a motion and a second to put this before The council, let's take a minute. If there's anybody who wants to step out, you're more than welcome to do so now.
Steve, not to take it personal. Can I leave? They're leaving for me. There goes Steve's family.
Okay. As they file out, we'll go on to agenda item number 9.1. This is a settlement agreement. Much like I announced under agenda item number 4, a recent opinion issued by a public access counselor with the Attorney General's office has issued an opinion of how this type of agreement, this settlement agreement, is to be presented before it's voted on. And so I don't screw up too much more in the legal sense. I'm going to turn this over to City Attorney Storino. He'll explain a little bit about the PAC opinion that was issued and why we are presenting this resolution in such a manner. And after all of that's done and the city attorney is completed, I will then ask for a motion to approve. Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. As the mayor indicated, a public access consular opinion from the Attorney General's office indicates that material terms of any settlement agreement should be made verbalized to those people in the audience prior to it being voted on. So this evening, before the City Council is a resolution to accept a settlement agreement between the city and the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency, or the IEPA. I'm going to walk through about 7 or 8 different, quote, material terms of that particular settlement agreement. This litigation and lawsuit between the city and, again, by way of background, between the city and the IEPA has been going on since July of 2011. It has been litigated in the DuPage County Circuit Court, and I am pleased to report that after a series of discussions between both units of government, we were able to reach the following accord. The first material term is the city will pay a $25,000 fine to the IEPA. It'll be deposited in the Environmental Protection Trust Fund of the IEPA. By May 31, 2015, the city will have completed the construction of what is called a Supplemental Environmental Project, as SEP, which project is already underway, and that project is entitled the Salt Creek Trail Lift Station Water Quality and Landscape Enhancement Project. That project will benefit all the citizens of Elmhurst and carries with it a value of approximately $100,000. And as I say, that project is underway. By December 31st, the city will have fully operational a computerized maintenance management system, CMMS, which will be able to relate data between different lift stations. By December 31st, 2014, the City Public Works, our Public Works Committee, working with our consultant RJN, will prepare and recommend a proposed sanitary sewer improvement plan to reduce or eliminate inflow and infiltration, I&I, from the city's sanitary sewer from both public and private sources. By January 15th, 2015, the city will submit a proposed sanitary sewer improvement plan. By September 30th, 2015, the city will complete its major public improvement project to the sanitary sewer system, being the Jackson Street Lift Station improvements, including the installation of the wet weather force main from Jackson Street Lift Station to the city water reclamation facility and the installation of a 2 million gallon holding tank at our city's water reclamation facility. By December 15th, 2017, the city will complete the inspection and and evaluation of private inflow and infiltration. And finally, by December 31st, 2021, the city will eliminate or rehabilitate private sector I&I. That concludes the major material terms of this consent order.
Okay. I will ask for a motion to approve the consent. Oh, actually, I'm going to ask Patty to read the resolution before I ask for a motion.
The entire resolution?
No, just the,
Oh, just the title.
just the resolution,
Okay.
just the title,
All
sorry.
right, it's R 70/2014, a resolution to approve the consent order regarding people of the state of Illinois versus city of Elmhurst.
Motion to approve, Alderman Hipskin, second by Alderman Mulliner. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, I'll ask Clerk Spencer to please call the roll.
Hipskin.
Aye.
Mulliner.
Aye.
Wagner.
Aye.
Gutenkopf.
Aye.
Schroeder.
Aye.
Dunn.
Aye.
Leader.
Aye.
Palumski.
Aye.
Graham.
Aye.
York.
Aye.
Levin.
Aye.
Healy.
Aye.
Conquist.
Aye.
Kennedy.
Aye.
14 ayes, 0 nays.
14 ayes, 0 nays. Motion passes. Resolution 9.1 is approved. On to agenda item number 10. Any other business? Dan? Dan? I'll fill you in after the meeting, Dan. Sorry, where was I? Other business. 10.1. Any other business? Alderman York?
Thank you, Your Honor. I forgot to make an announcement. The Elmhurst Children's Assistance Foundation is having a fundraiser, their first annual Oktoberfest at the Snuggery. It's going to be October 9th from 7 to 11 p.m. All are welcome.
Wonderful. Any other business? Mr. McLeister, we good? All right. Now is going to be somewhat regrettable, but hopefully enjoyable. Regrettable that we have to do it at all. But we have 10.2, as we like to do when an alderman is moving on. We take the opportunity to recognize that person, in this case, Alderman Steve Hipskin, who has served almost 10 years on behalf of his constituents and the city of Elmhurst. We certainly have a rocking chair here for Alderman Hipskin in his retirement years, although I don't think he's retiring anytime soon. Before I ask you to sit in your seat there, Alderman Hipskin, is there anything you want to say? I know you did say something last meeting. Is there anything you want to say before we put you in the chair?
I will take a couple moments. And as I look around the room, there's 4 people I don't know. So, many, many years ago, my wife and I decided to move to Elmhurst. 6 kids later, we know we made the right decision. We met many great people, and we were involved in many great activities. One of those activities was Mayor Tom Marcucci, appointing me to alderman of the 4th Ward in August of 2005. In that time, the city of Elmhurst and the committee I served on and the committees I served with, we accomplished many, many great things. Too many to even go into great detail on. I started going into detail last Saturday night with some people sitting around a table, and we were talking about things, and I started talking about this, redoing this and the anaerobic digester and this and that, and the conversation dulled pretty quickly. And one of the gals said, no, hold on, but we were talking about Elmhurst, and they were all Elmhurst residents, and it was a lively conversation. So one of the gals said, remember the cartoon years ago, the happiness is, or the love is, and then there would be a ... and you would see a different image, or you would see some home, and one of the girls said, well, let's go around Elmhurst, and Elmhurst is. So I started out just because I knew I had the boring part of the conversation. I said, well, it's 14 square miles. And didn't get much response. And then I said, Elmhurst is. I said 40,000 plus people. Not much response at all. The chair was taken away from me right away, and the gal sat up, and she said, no, Elmhurst is a town that cares about their kids. And as we know we do, all the activities that are based around the kids. You know, I mean, whether it's ECAF, whether it's, you know, a charity, whether it's one child that has an unfortunate accident or a sickness, this town steps out for people. The next person, Elmhurst cares about senior citizens. And they went on with, they did this and this and this. Elmhurst cares about people. Elmhurst is generous people. Elmhurst is neighborhoods. Elmhurst is charities. Elmhurst is involved people. Elmhurst is positive, proactive people. Elmhurst cares about their veterans. Elmhurst has great schools. Elmhurst is great parks. And the list went on and went on and went on. And we were talking about city council, but everyone was just talking about what a great town we have and what a fantastic town. And this is a great town. We have made, my family of 8 have made a life here that I can't imagine anywhere else. They'll take me out feet first in this town. It's been a great experience. And I love the town. I love the time that I've put in for the town. I love the accomplishments that the city of Elmhurst has, that I've helped usher in. And I'm just very proud of the time. I'm very proud of the accomplishments. I'd like to thank really the citizens of Elmhurst. I'd like to then thank the city staff, because this is a great city, and it is 300 plus employees run by a great leader and many great department heads and many great employees. And we're very fortunate to have that. I'd like to thank Mayor Marcucci, Mayor DeCiani, Mayor Levin, and most recently, Mayor Morley. 4 great mayors that just continue this town. I'd like to thank all the aldermen I've served with, both past and present. I've learned a lot from each and every one of you. I'd like to also thank all the people, all the committees we've served with, all the people who have voiced their opinions for this town and have helped move the ball forward to continue this town to be a great place that it is. So thank you very much, Elmhurst.
Okay, I know that 1 or 2 aldermen want to say something. Absolutely, please sit. And I can think, you can turn and you can do whatever you want at this point.
Norm Leader may not go first.
Yeah.
Norm Leader may
No,
not go
absolutely, I can think of no one better to set the bar and have us all fail afterwards than Norm Leader. And I know that Norm has prepared a couple of
I
special
don't know
comments.
if I can
Alderman
top
Hibson.
that, Steve, but I'm going to say what I'm going to say. There are some people in elective office for whom politics is rather like a theater. Like a theater company in which they are cast in different roles, depending on the moment or the issue. And when I have come to know them, I have found them unworthy of serious attention. That is why you, Steve Hibskin, who has been on the council since 2005, is so worthy of all of our attention and respect. You're a man who has always voted the dictates of your conscience, always. Principle has always come before popularity or ambition. You have an unerring sense of understanding what is important and what is not. and you've always been open to new ideas and new initiatives. You've been rock solid for economic growth and development, because you know that Elmhurst, like all cities, must periodically renew itself or die. There is no more trustworthy or courageous ally in a big fight for Elmhurst than you, Steve. You don't speak as often as some of the others do, but when you do, we listen intently and with respect. And I know you have little patience for those who are beyond the reach of reason, and you have absolutely no patience for those who sabotage progress. You know, I've sat here and seen so many people say farewell, and you will pardon me if my mood is such that memory and melancholy are inextricably mixed. Almost 10 years, we came up here together, it all flows together, and it is all falling incredibly into the past, even as I say the words. The trouble with time is that it's too fleeting. It vanishes segment by segment, and it comes with incalculable swiftness. 10 years. To leave an elective office, to leave the arena, is to part with something of value. And you know how much it is worth, and so do I. The excitements, the challenges, intellectual, emotional, will be missed, but you leave voluntarily, undefeated, head held high, knowing you have accomplished what you set out to do, and you have. The best prize life has to offer is a chance to perform work worth doing. This is clearly work worth doing. This city is at once, as you have alluded to and said, the embodiment of present hopes and dreams and the guardian of all hopes and dreams that have gone before. And you have done much to make this a reality. Your life is part of the record of those men who do not merely talk, but whose lives wonderfully exemplify the things they talk about. As Teddy Roosevelt said, right is right and wrong is wrong. Teddy would be proud of you tonight, and so are all of us. Thank you, Steve.
I know I interrupted you, Alderman Mulliner, but I had to let Alderman Leader go first, but
I appreciate that. Ditto? I'm done. Yeah, that's impossible to top. Steve, I've known you for a long time, and you've done a wonderful thing for this town, for your family, and the things that you had mentioned there about what Elmhurst is, that all your friends started to talk about, that's you. That's you, the caring, the giving person, the person who stepped out of the comfort zone. It's easy to sit at home and, just kind of do your own thing and just raise your family, but it takes a little extra to take that little step out and say, hey, I'm going to try to help change things and keep things moving forward and create progress. And Steve, you've done that. You've done it very honorably, and there's no way I could echo what Norm said, but Norm said it the best that anybody could. You are a man of integrity. Thank you very much for all your service.
anyone else? Alderman Levin.
Well, it's a little embarrassing that Norm plagiarized so much of my speech. But it's also good that we have Norm on the council because he does speak so well for all of us. But Steve, you know, I looked back and I thought, 10 years, that's a long time of public service. And I congratulate you for 10 years of time well spent. I can't imagine that the international travel and your 26 kids are going to keep you from contributing, but I understand you have a lot of time constraints, and I appreciate that you've given so much of your time so far and up till this point. I had the pleasure of serving with you on the Finance Committee, and I think it was a great committee. Under your leadership, we all worked well together and worked very professionally, and I give you credit for that. You have created a record of public service, and as Alderman Mulder said, you care. This is a community that is better because you were here. Alderman Leader also has said at various times the council becomes somewhat of a club, and I don't mean that in the bad sense, but we work together, we get to know each other. And when I first came on the council, I didn't know you at all. I consider you very much a friend now, and someone who I hope will stay in touch and be around as time goes on. So sometimes you've said things I thought you were off your rocker. I see you're on your rocker. You look better there. I want to wish you heartfelt best wishes and thank you for your service.
Alderman Dunn?
Steve, I was fortunate, as was Alderman Levin, to serve on the Finance Committee with you, almost 2 years at this point, and learned a lot. You were on the Finance Committee the whole time you were on City Council, I believe, almost 10 years. So, but I think it was the right spot for you. It really played to your strengths, and you were in a leadership role in that committee for most of it. I think you truly had what is best for Elmhurst at heart in everything you did. As was mentioned before, you're very pro-development, but you were also very tenacious in your fiscal discipline. And you, I think one of the things I really enjoyed when speaking with you about one of the accomplishments here is our extremely high bond rating, and how the city works so hard for that, and it's a testament to both city staff and to your involvement in the Finance Committee. So, Steve, I'll miss hearing a lot about, as was mentioned before, your trips. I know you do some skiing trips, you do some golf trips occasionally, and those were always great to hear about. I'm sure you'll continue with those now that you have a little bit extra time, at least on Monday nights. So I know you're a guy that works very hard. You'll continue to do that, and you also enjoy life, and wish you the best.
Alderman Polomsky?
Thank you, Mayor. Alderman Hipskind, I want to thank you for your service and dedication.
Danny, can you?
Okay.
Please. Thank you.
I want to thank you for your service and dedication. I'm lucky to have had the opportunity to learn for myself what I've learned from what I was told by one of your friends growing up, and that is that you are a person of character, and you have demonstrated that in your time here and in your family life and how you participate in the community. You've always used common sense and your business acumen to make wise decisions for our community. And I'd say I most admire your ability to see the big picture with clarity when there's a decision that seems kind of muddied, that you're always able to take a step back and see how it fits in context, and you're among the best at doing that. So I might be giving you a call for ask a little insight from time to time. But it's been such a pleasure serving with you, and along the lines of what Alderman Mulliner said, here on your last night, you didn't go over some of your contributions. Instead, you talked about what Elmhurst is, and you know, that's who you are. You're somebody that tries to highlight the assets of others and of our community, and you're working for the greater good, and I really appreciate it. So best to you. Thank you.
Alderman Deuter?
Thank you, Mayor. Steve, we've only had a short time to work together. I think, like Bob said, we've been on the committee for almost 2 years. But in that short time, it's clear to me, as others have said, that you're guided by what you believe to be best for Elmhurst, and I appreciate that. As I was thinking about, what about Steve strikes me, it's that you have strong instincts and you trust those instincts. I don't think you're one to overthink or unnecessarily complicate an issue, which in our committee discussions, I think was sometimes a very welcome balance. As we were getting really deep into details, you would kind of step back, as I think Alderman Plonsky was saying, and kind of just go with your gut on some things, and I respect that. I will certainly miss your straight thinking and your sense of humor, so thank you for your service.
Well, he's facing this way. Do you want to jump in, or you want to wait,
I'll
Kevin?
wait. I always wait till the end.
All right.
Steve.
Alderman Wagner.
One of the first calls I received after I was elected in 2009 was from you. And the positive attitude and the excitement that you just were giving me was just very welcoming to the dais, and a very daunting financial time in 2009 for the city itself. So it was very, very appreciated, and I don't think I've thanked you enough for being a good friend like that. So thank you. But I'm never going to top what Norm has done. But just know that you were a real leader on and off the dais, and I watched that and I appreciated it. So you're a successful man. You've got a great family, and quite frankly, that's all that matters in life, to keep that. And your Elmhurst was fantastic, and that just shows the kind of person you are. So as a resident, thanks for your service to the city of Elmhurst, and appreciate your friendship. Well done.
Alderman Honquist, you want to?
We're going in line?
Sure, why not?
I've only done this job, as you know, for a year. One of the first things Steve said to me, I made a comment, and I forget which meeting it was, and I was a little unsure of myself. He said, "Don't be unsure of yourself. Your opinion is just as important as everybody else's." And I appreciate that. Help put a little confidence in me getting started here, number one. And number two, since I've only done it for a year and you've done it for 10 years, I can't possibly imagine the amount of time and effort you put into this job. So thank you for that. I think the city thanks you for that. I loved your speech, and I thought it was spot on. It's the same reason I'm sitting up here. So thanks for your service, Steve, and good luck.
Before I start, I just want to ask Norm if he'll write my eulogy and obituary before he finishes anything other projects before he moves forward. But
Assuming all round.
thank you. Steve, thank you very much for your service. You did a great job over 10 years. We first met in probably 2005 when I had my own city issue, and you were one of the first guys to come to my house and help me out ultimately. But you said to me at that time, you ought to think about running sometime. We need more guys like you. Fast forward a few years, and then 6 years after that, and here I am. So thank you for giving me the push. Thank you for helping me as a friend and an alderman, and best of luck to you in the future. Well done.
Well, Steve, I'll personally say I'm glad you're leaving the council. In all seriousness, of course I'm teasing. I'm gonna come at this from a slightly different angle. I certainly agree with everything everybody has said to this point. You've been a staunch advocate for the city of Elmhurst. You've been a staunch advocate for economic development, and I think you said it, moving the ball forward. But when I look at it, I look at your personal situation, and you own and run a highly successful business. You have 6 beautiful children who are all doing great things in and of themselves. And then to give your time to the city, to raise your hand when an alderman was needed in the 4th Ward, and then to run and win 2 subsequent elections, that quite honestly, that's a level of commitment I don't understand. I've got 2 kids, and I'm running around crazy half the time, and a job that doesn't have the responsibilities you did. So to be able to manage all of that and still want to do this job and do it well, and bring a higher level of thinking because of your experiences. The council, I think when you go, I think that's what the council is going to miss most, is that higher level of thinking. I think Alderman Deuter referenced it, the ability to see through some of the clutter and get to the issue. I think that's what's going to be most missed from the council standpoint, and personally, you and I have always had very lively conversations about many different topics. Hopefully those can continue outside of the chambers and outside, but I wish you nothing but the best, and thank you for your service. I know it takes a lot.
Alderman Hipskin, you have the floor.
That all this would not be possible without my wife, my wonderful wife, Nora.
Yes, yes.
He's as smart as we all said he was.
Nice save.
Steve, it's been a pleasure serving your almost 10-year here with the city council with you. I think of you and I think of an elected official. I don't like the word politician, I think of the word elected official. As others have already mentioned here tonight, I think you embody that fully. Embody that from the standpoint of always looking for what is the right thing to do, always trying to keep things moving forward. Also, one thing that you do probably better than any of us up here is acknowledging others, keeping the spotlight off of yourself no matter what your achievements are, and acknowledging others. You did that even tonight, acknowledging city staff, acknowledging, which is a good thing, your wife, and others as well. I just wanted to say that it has been a lot of fun serving on the city council with you while you've been the 4th Ward Alderman. We always turn to you to explain the various, and believe me, at least from my standpoint, the various complex financial issues. I will always remember your detailed explanations for all these various problems that came across the dais when it comes to anything financial. I hope now that you will cherish and enjoy your Monday nights, not only with your family, but also being able to catch some of these very important Monday night football games. So thank you for your service.
Alderman Gutenkopf?
Well, I think the problem with going second to last is that almost everything's been said. I want to give you my heartfelt thanks for your service in the past 10 years. I've served with you for almost 8, and 2 of them together on the Finance Committee, which I must say were 2 of the most interesting years I've spent on City Council. And so I thank you for chairing the Finance Committee while I was there, because all of that was fairly new to me at the time. I appreciated your wisdom and your guidance. I wish you the happiest times back with your family, giving you back your Monday nights. And so I certainly hope you enjoy them. And again, thank you for your service.
Patty, you want to say a couple words?
Yeah, Steve, I just want to thank you for your service and wish you the best of luck. You've always had a big smile and always a kind, how are you doing? And hang in there and give it the old big fight. So thank you so much for your encouragement.
City Manager Grabowski, you want to say a couple of words?
I do. 3 years ago we met, and you may not remember this, but at one of the interview sessions, you came out and said, just be yourself. And I've always appreciated that. It really put me at ease. But on behalf of the staff, I want to say thank you, because it has truly been a pleasure for all of us to work with you and all the staff that you've worked with. And thank you for all your support over those years.
Thank you, Your Honor. Steve, good save on the recognizing Nora, too, because if you hadn't done it, I was getting ready to. But everybody recognizes your wonderful family, your 6 kids, but I know the genesis of that family, and that's you and Nora. And I've known you guys for a long time, and I see the love in your household, and I see the really cool things that you talked about here, how you've ingrained those in your family, in your kids, taking your kids on mission trips to, instead of going on vacation when you very easily could go to Vail, or you very easily could go to wherever you wanted to go, you take the time out of your life to serve others, just like you've done up here for 10 years. You answered the call when Mayor Marcucci asked you to. You're a very special person. I won't, however, forgive you for coming over one night with your then 4-month-old daughter in your arms and saying, "Hey, Kevin, have you ever thought about serving on city council?" And we had to talk about it, and you brought the packet over and went through it in about 5 minutes. So I'm glad that you talked me into it. I suspect some of the commitments that you told me I was going to have to make, they're a little bit greater than that, but I've really enjoyed serving with you for the 5 or 6 years that I've been around here, but I've really enjoyed knowing you for the 8 or 10 years that I've known you and gotten to know your family. We're going to miss you. You've been a wonderful mentor to me, and hopefully my leadership is half as good as yours, and I'll be more than happy. Thank you very much for your service.
Okay, well, I'll wrap this up. Steve, first of all, thank you for your service. A lot of the things that have been said, I agree with. I had written down, the way I put it was, you had a limited tolerance for wasting time. And I mean that in the best possible way. You really wanted to get stuff done. You really weren't one to get caught in the weeds on some minutia on a project. In fact, I think a couple of folks said it. You had laser focus on the end goal. There'd be times where we would be 20 minutes into a conversation and you'd kind of call time out and say, "Guys, what are you doing? Don't forget what we're doing. This is what we're doing over here. Here's our goal." I'll never forget, I was in a meeting in the mayor's office with Pete DeCiani, Chris Healy, and myself, and we were having a discussion. And that discussion was getting very loud. And it was about a tax levy. And you just walked in the room in 30 seconds and said, "What? Wait, where are you at?" And you got us to get on one page in about 30 seconds and literally walked out of the room. And all three of us just said, what just went on here? I mean, that type of focus and kind of reminding us sometimes that we get caught up in our governmental process maybe a little too much. And I think your focus in that area is what a lot of the citizens feel, and I really appreciate you bringing that focus to the dais and to our discussions. Certainly your dedication is unparalleled. 6 wives, well, that'd be something. Wow. Nora, you'll have to explain that one when you get home.
Got 5 more wives to thank.
I've only been up here for 7 years, and I let the cat out of the bag on the last day. 6 kids and 1 wife and a very successful business. That's saying a lot. If you just said that, 6 kids, 1 wife, a very successful business. But something you mentioned last week that I think quantifies a lot of this, which is I'm always talking to people, especially when we have these flooding challenges, and people talk about, well, what can I do? And I encourage everyone to go to meetings. Go to meetings, go to meetings. Go to our meetings, go to their meetings. And people will occasionally say to me, well, I've been to 3 meetings and not much happened, or I'm doing this. You said something last week, and you hit it on the head in terms of quantifying it. 500 meetings. 500 meetings. So you've got 2 city council meetings a month and 2 committee meetings a month. Times, 12 months, that's 48. In over 10 years, that's about 500 meetings. But that does not include all of the individual meetings, all of the meetings with constituents, even the getaway meetings we've done on weekends. So we're talking over 500 meetings. That to me is just something that's very impressive, and stay successful in the other parts of your lives. The last thing I'll say is that I had the pleasure of being a new alderman 7 years ago, and I served on the finance committee with Alderman Hipskin. And he truly was a mentor at the time, helped me go through packets, understanding where the tough decisions were being made and where staff had done their work, and really helped me through that. But the other thing I'll say is people ask me, what's one of the best things about being an elected official? They asked it, now that I'm mayor, but they also asked when I was alderman. And one thing that I can't say enough is it's the friends that I've made. And on a personal note, you are the very first friend I made when I was an alderman 7 years ago. You've continued to be a fantastic supporter and a great friend. I consider you a lifelong friend, so much so, talking about keeping it in perspective, there was occasion a couple of times where Alderman Hipskin and I would disagree on something. And we'd have a private meeting, and he'd get to the end, he goes, we're gonna disagree, but you know what? I think we're both doing what's right for the city. And 20 years from now, we're gonna be walking along the beach, and we're gonna bump into each other, and we're gonna have a beer. And we're gonna talk about everything we've done, and we're still gonna be great friends. And I'm gonna take you up on that, Steve. I hope it's not 20 years, but personally, thank you for your friendship, and professionally, thank you for all of your hard work. So thank you. Okay. That having been said, I am going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Alderman Hipskin with the motion to adjourn. And if he could have his own second, I'd give it to him, but he can't. Alderman York, his fellow ward mate, motion to a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.